Is there a supplemental agenda?
No, there is not.
Disclosure of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, for open session agenda items and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, planning.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The process for the planning meeting for each application will be as follows. 1, the clerk will announce the item. 2, the mayor will ask if there is anyone present other than the applicant or their agent with an interest in the item and to indicate so by raising their hand. 3, individuals or their agent present with an interest in the item other than the applicant will be asked to proceed to the podium, provide their name and address, and address council. 4, council will be asked if it has any questions of each presenter and then the applicant. 5, administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. 6, council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the item. If there is no one present indicating an interest in the item, there will be no presentation by administration, and council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the item. Notice: if any person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of council in respect of the proposed applications does not make oral or written submissions to the municipal clerk before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal a decision to the local planning appeal tribunal if otherwise eligible, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as party to the appeal. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website. All persons receiving notice of this planning meeting will receive a notice of passing of a bylaw relating to any of the items presented here tonight if approved, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of passing or a notice of council's decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk. Thank you.
9A, application for zoning bylaw amendment, Peter and Terry Roads, 8009 17th line, Community of Raleigh, South Kent.
Is the applicant, his or her agent, present? If so, please raise your hand. Recognized. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what action would council like to take with regard to the application? Councillor Thompson.
Happy to move the recommendations.
Councillor Stacacci.
Equally as happy to second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0. 9B, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, 2566288 Ontario Inc., Churchill Park Road, Community of Chatham City.
Is the applicant, his or her agent, present? If so, please raise your hand. Recognized. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what action would council like to take with regard to this application? Councillor B. McGregor.
I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor Finn.
I'll second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0. 9C, application for zoning bylaw amendment, Ursuline Religious of the Diocese of London and Ontario, 20 Mercia Way, Community of Chatham City. And council, I'll just advise you that 2 letters were received and forwarded to council, and administration has a small presentation.
Mr. Jacques will present a couple of things. He has modified his recommendation somewhat, so we'll take a look at that first, and then we'll proceed on.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. In the time that's transpired since the posting of the public notice in the meeting tonight, there has been some dialogue with myself between the applicant and an abutting neighbor, which will lead to a slight amendment in the recommendation. But in the meantime, I thought it important to provide just some context regarding this project in this area of our municipality, as it might be of interest to council. The application before council tonight to amend the Chatham-Kent zoning bylaw is to facilitate the further expansion of Villa Angela, which is currently conditionally sold to Jarlette. The zoning amendment application will facilitate the addition of a 60-room addition to this building, and the zoning bylaw specifically addresses increased density, lot coverage, decreased setbacks from property lines, and the location of accessory structures. The shaded yellow area on this conceptual site plan does represent the addition, with the gray area representing the existing building. However, to conceptualize this development, this is a rendering provided by Jarlette, which shows, I guess from a bird's eye view, McNaughton Avenue running along the foreground and Kyle Trail North toward the left of the screen. The facility or building shown near the top is the existing Villa Angela with the proposed U-shaped addition in the rear. This facility, if approved tonight and a site plan approved later this year, would be planned to be constructed likely about 2 years out, possibly a little bit longer depending on market conditions. It's important to note that this is part of a continuum of care campus proposed by Jarlette, as their vision includes a proposed 160-bed long-term care facility at the intersection of Kyle Trail North and McNaughton Avenue. Now, that particular proposal is not with council tonight for consideration. The zoning amendment was approved by the previous council in 2017. However, council should expect that a site plan application for both of these projects come forward sometime in 2020. These two projects represent approximately $30 million of construction investment and up to 80 net new jobs in our community with these two facilities combined. That being said, I am proposing that item VII under the zoning bylaw amendment recommendation be removed. This was included to require a 15-meter minimum setback for an emergency generator on site. It's my recommendation to remove this from the zoning bylaw and let the site plan approval process dictate an appropriate location for the generator. The reason being is that through proper noise mitigation, it may very well be that the most compatible place for the generator might be within that 15-meter setback, and council will have the opportunity to review that location as well as a noise study prepared by a professional engineer at a later date when the site plan comes forward. That being said, it is recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application file D14 C3219U to amend the site-specific zoning regulations of the subject lands known as 20 Marici Way in the community of Chatham to I, remove reference to Ursuline Sisters in the permitted use, 2, increase maximum lot coverage from 40% to 42%, 3, increase maximum density per lot from 50 units to 110 units, 4, reduce the minimum rear yard from 15.24 meters to 7.5 meters, 5, reduce the minimum side yard for the easterly lot line from 15.24 meters to 7.5 meters, and 6, permit an accessory building at a 0-meter setback abutting 575 McNaughton Avenue West be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant, his or agent, present? If so, please raise your hand. Noted. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what action would council like to take with regard to this application? Councillor Kirkwood-White? Councillor Crew?
I'll second it.
Any questions? Councillor Bondi, followed by Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Mayor Cannon. Ryan, I'm just curious, after this company purchased Marici Place, were the nuns, the sisters, were they consulted? Did they know this was going to happen when their facility was sold? Like, do you know that? Or was this like post-sale development? Because I'm relatively familiar with the facility and it's kind of a standalone.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I can only assume that the sisters are aware, as the transaction isn't closed yet, and this zoning bylaw amendment, to my understanding, is a condition of that sale going through.
Oh, it hasn't closed. Okay, great. Now, another question. This isn't really so much of a zoning thing; it's more just for information. But will the what we used to call the mother house, where the nuns live, will that remain exclusive from the short-term care facility? In other words, will the nuns still be in their section with the kiva, the chapel, and then the facility be behind it, or will it just kind of blend into one? Because I'm just referencing the removal of the Ursuline sisters in permitted use. So will it still, I think you understand what I'm saying, will it still be like a mother house at the front and then kind of a separate, more public facility in the back, or will there just be no separation between the two facilities?
I don't have the specifics. Mr. Bob Campbell, who's an executive with Jarlette, is here tonight. If it pleases council, I'll ask Bob to address that following questions of administration.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ryan.
Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ryan. Ryan, can you tell me you're adding 60 rooms, units. Is there enough parking for 110 units? Or will these people not be driving? Or, like, I'm not trying to be funny, I'm just wondering.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The proposal will add a number of parking spaces from what currently exists at the site. The amount of parking spaces will exceed what the minimum requirement is of the Chatham-Kent zoning bylaw, and Jarlette's proposing additional spaces to meet their functional need. So it will include spaces for staff as well as any residents that would and visitors that require parking.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, through the mayor. I wanted to address part of the concern, I think, from Councillor Bondi. When we attended the open house when we had the PIC, is that called? I'm not sure what the word is called, at Ursuline Mother House with the neighborhood. That was one of my questions. And I left feeling very comfortable that the sisters, this was part of their succession or departure plan, and that Jarlette had guaranteed the care of the sisters in the long-term care unit for as long as they needed, or for as long as they were going to be there. And that was part of the agreement, and I felt very comfortable that the sisters were feeling comfortable with that. And it was a guarantee that they would continue to meet the long-term care level of service in the interim, before they got their actual long-term care beds taken care of and erected that facility, that those sisters who are living there now or that would require that long-term care in the interim would be provided for at a long-term care level of service. So that made me feel a lot better. And that the sisters were part of this, as I say, succession plan. I think that is correct, right, Mr. Campbell? Yes, very much so, yeah.
Ms. Jacques, was there someone else you wanted to call up to clarify something, or are we
Thank
good?
you, Mayor Caniff. I believe that has answered the question. I've got a nod from
Perfect. All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 10, deputations. Sorry.
Council, this evening we have 4 deputations that have registered by 3 p.m. today. All speakers, I will remind you, you have a maximum of 5 minutes, and the timer will be on the screen. The first speaker is Mrs. Cicely Coppola, and she is the chair of Chatham-Kent Chamber of Commerce, here to speak on item 17A, the 2020 capital budget. On deck will be Dr. John Button.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I am here tonight as the chair of the Board of Directors of the Chatham-Kent Chamber of Commerce and our 340 members from across this municipality, members of diverse size and sector that support the Chamber by choice, as we proudly stand as the local voice of business. Together, these members boast approximately 6,900 employees with families to support, thus representing almost 20% of Chatham-Kent's population. This is certainly a voice to heed. In 2019, we polled our members, and they are on side to future-focused investment in Chatham-Kent for the overall good of business and of community growth. Here we are in 2020, starting the path of a new decade, and we ask that you, as council and leaders of the municipality, maintain your vision as we forge into the future of Chatham-Kent. For many, many years, things have remained status quo in terms of growth for this community on all levels. If change is not pushed to the forefront, we are at risk of further stagnation and lost opportunities, a risk I am confident no one person in this room wishes to see unfold. If we prioritize regular investment in capital projects, successfully execute a refreshed transportation master plan, and dovetail with an inspired airport master plan, what could Chatham-Kent be in the year 2040? What positive accomplishments could we, as a united community, be boasting of after decades of positive vision and strategy by council and partners? Here is what we would like to celebrate. That Chatham-Kent Municipal Council and leaders, chambers, BIAs, developers, and valued partners rallied together to redesignate and develop lands for use along the Highway 401, recognizing the advantages of the new 6-lane highway running through the central expanse of Chatham-Kent. That industry and manufacturers embracing the new Gordie Howe International Bridge found Chatham-Kent ready for growth and firmly planted their roots abundantly along the Chatham-Kent thoroughfare that provided them with the needed close access and faster timelines that they sought. That Chatham-Kent became a major force, actively competing with larger and growing communities such as London, Brantford, and Woodstock. Large-scale investors, commercial businesses, hotels, restaurants, and shopping destinations cropped up at the new interchange and overpass that was created at Charing Cross Road. We are thriving, and commerce is steadily growing and flowing, both within the municipal borders and outwards from Chatham-Kent. How did this happen? People took action. Council stood up to the challenge before them. They appealed a new growth strategy in order to change the dismal growth trajectory laid out in the Watson Report of 2019. They created a new strategy for the municipality, looking at both short and long-term projects and investment that would pay years of dividends. Stepping out of previous comfort zones, council members took the stance to debenture a new interchange access for the greater good of future citizens and many generations to come. They recognized that the time was now, or possibly never. Council took heed of the collective voice of local business, embodied by the Chatham-Kent Chamber of Commerce 2019 poll. They noted that 79% of respondents of this poll were in favor of an interchange at the Charing Cross Road. Even though 53% of business only saw this as a direct benefit, Council heard that the overall vision for the community took precedence. Council listened to the comments such as, "It would finally make us a 401 city. We need it badly if we are going to grow, and it is the most straightforward way in if you want people to stop and not just drive by Chatham-Kent." Recognizing that 57% of respondents supported an enhanced airport to include flights to Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and beyond, decision makers seized the opportunity to link the municipal airport with the Charing Cross Road access at the 401. This opened even more opportunity, as both business and air travelers took advantage of a revamped airport with added service amenities that supported its growing demand. Modeling the great success that neighboring London had with its interchange proximity to airport, economic development attracted industry and commerce on a large scale, selling diverse access as an added value of locating in Chatham-Kent. This Chatham-Kent is possible. It will take many difficult decisions, many risks, and investing countless hours of hard effort, but it will be worth it. We all appreciate the amazing quality of life that Chatham-Kent offers. That very element has been touted nationally and enticed many new residents, something surely to be proud of. And yet, we have the potential to be so much more than a community to simply live and play in. Now is the time to take action and elevate to our full potential, to prove that Chatham-Kent is also open for business. Our ask of today's council, be the change. Be the change that we need to foster this Chatham-Kent of 2040. Now is the time to be visionary, innovative, and future-oriented. Be the council that made the right decisions for growth in Chatham-Kent. Thank you for envisioning with us.
Thank you. Next speaker is Dr. John Button on item 17E, the crosswalk in Ridgetown. On deck will be Mr. Bill Parks.
Mayor Kenneth and Municipal Councilors, thank you for the opportunity.
I speak in support of the establishment of a crosswalk at Nahi Ridge Elementary School in Ridgetown. I come as a concerned citizen, as a volunteer at the school, and as a coroner in the southwest region of the province. Nahi Ridge School is located at the eastern edge of Ridgetown on the south side of Main Street. In that area, Main Street is the busiest street in Ridgetown. The area extends on the north side of the street from Harold and Cecil Streets, which access Ridgetown District High School, east to the campus of the University of Guelph with its hundreds of students and staff, and to the East Kent Memorial Arena, which is directly across from the school, to the busiest driveway and busiest business in Ridgetown, Tim Hortons, also directly across from the school. There are sidewalks along the north and south sides of the street. That on the south side is much more recent, while that on the north side is much more widely used, regardless of the eventual destination. Old habits die hard. Twice daily, 13 school buses arrive and depart from the school, interrupting traffic flow on the street. Together with the plummet of caffeine blood levels, this presents a real traffic nightmare for children on foot to navigate. Despite the busing, a good number of students walk to school each day. East of this area, Main Street bends north and becomes Victoria Road. But let's not kid ourselves. It's still Highway 21. Outbound traffic starts accelerating to highway speeds before it gets to the arena, while inbound traffic, that not going to Tim Hortons, whistles by the school at close to highway speeds. Last week, there was a conference at the university. Overflow parking was at the arena. A Chatham-Kent police cruiser was parked on the road shoulder in front of the school with its lights flashing to alert drivers to the potential peril. Despite these precautions, the school principal had to assist her students crossing the street. Although the posted speed limit for 300 meters on each side of the school is 40 kilometers per hour, many drivers seem more intent on getting to their destinations than on the safety of our children. Many of the students start and end their days at the arena and must cross the street during the busiest times of the day with no supervision. Over the next 2 weeks, all 290 students will be going skating at the arena. They will be accompanied on their walk to the arena by teachers as they struggle to cross the street with skates and helmets. But as I am sure you recognize, getting young children from point A to point B on foot is more like herding cats than orderly marching. They will be strung out from door to door. The school's 5th to grade 7 and 8 students take their classes at the high school, but make regular trips on foot to Nahi Ridge. These are but a few examples where having no crosswalk is putting our children at risk. I could go on. That there has been no serious traffic incident involving school children on Main Street East in Ridgetown is a result of good luck, not good management. Nahi Ridge students need a crosswalk to help them get across this busy thoroughfare. The lack of a crosswalk at Nahi Ridge is unconscionable. The legitimate concerns for our children's safety should not take a back seat to anything. I urge you to get on with it. Good luck eventually runs out. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Bill Parks. His items are item 11A1, 11B2, 11B6, 14B, 16A, 17A, 17C, and 17F. He will have 5 minutes for that. On deck is Mr. Paul Chattel.
Thank you, Tom. This one right here. This one. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak with you. I enjoyed looking through your agenda this evening. I have a few questions. I don't know that you can answer them immediately, but I would like answers to them in the future if possible. The tile drainage debentures, 11A1, is this the normal amount of uptake by the citizens of Chatham-Kent? 11B, 2, financial indicator review. This is impressive. I'd like to compliment the accountants looking after our business. I'd like to compliment the councillors looking after our business. Low risk in all of these areas, meaning sustainability, net debt, total reserves, cash ratio, and debt service. I compliment you on being a well-run group. 11B, 6, Navistar Perimeter Soil Assessment. If you look at your notes, you will see a lot of samples have been around the perimeter of the property. I would say that's very commendable. I ask, though, is it enough? Do you need some samples on the interior so that you know that this property is as safe as you would like it? Thank you. The budget variance, 2.6 million. Now, I guess in this room, 2.6 million isn't a whole lot when you're dealing with $325 or so million dollars, but that little bit is being transferred to the reserve for road assessment, and I would say we as citizens like it. We need good roads. 16A, tourism support. Now this kind of hits me directly. Digital marketing, hosting travel writers, brochure display racks, maps, promoting festivals, assistance in developing tourism experiences. The Tourism Department of Chatham-Kent has worked at this for many, many years. And in this year, hosting a conference in southwestern Ontario, here in Chatham, with about 250 people, is a good plan. The conference host in Ridgetown for rural folks, another good plan. I would ask you to consider GPS and signs and Todd signs. I talked to my son this afternoon. He said the price for Todd signs is up. However, he wrote the check. So not everybody is against the Todd's increase. All these signs are good to get people to our properties. 17A, 2020 capital budget. Chris Tipper and Tom Kelly. Gentlemen, I have empathy for you. Because you get some more tax money, and that's good. But you got a Kyle Drive extension, 2.1 million. I think from what I've heard here in this room back in December, you do need it. Prosperity Way and 7th Line, Bloomfield, another $1.5 million, and I think you need that. An intersection at Queens Line and Merlin Road, $2 million. I suggest a stoplight might fix that, and you could leave the dirt lay where it is. But I ask the question. Park Avenue West, upgrade $1 million. I think that's likely needed. An idea of a stop sign that might work going back to Queens Line, Stevenson Road and Goodrow Line. I think one stop sign is excellent. Now, there's less traffic there, so maybe it's not quite as good. But I think that would be a good thing. Now, we need to jump one more, please. Civic Center renovations. I have empathy for our engineering group again. $18 million needed to repair this building. There's a bunch of other buildings of civic ownership that also need money. And then we have a desire for $60 million for an arena. As a taxpayer, I say, where does it stop? When do taxpayers revolt? And I thank you for taking time to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker this evening, Mr. Paul Chattel on item 17B, Public Works Downtown Service Level Standardization.
Good evening, everybody, through the mayor. Happy New Year to everybody first. Talking about item 17B, Ryan Brown's report about downtown service levels for Public Works mostly. I did have a chance to talk to Ryan last Friday, just briefly. I never had a chance to look at the report till yesterday. And we came to some deficiencies in the report, specifically relating to Chatham, our downtown. We, as the biggest BIA and with the most at stake, I guess, we don't think this report covers enough as it relates to how We spent the last year visiting all the other BIAs and previous meetings with Public Works and Engineering. Some of the things are in the wrong spot, I guess. We don't think Christmas banners and benches should be grouped together in one thing. I did send this letter to every councillor also, so you do have it. $50,000, is that enough? Probably not. Is it right to have it from the Together CK program to increase the Public Works budget? Probably not. Last year we did 14 events in downtown Chatham. Ryan's recommending 4 events plus 1 special one. That doesn't even come anywhere near what we encompassed in just our BIA, not including the other 6 or the other town associations that are out there. That's where the $50,000, I don't think it's going to cover everything, and it shouldn't be there. Some of the horticultural items that are on there, our downtown area has an extra levy already that pays for our horticultural works on top of that. So we don't think that belongs in there either, but that's specific to downtown Chatham, not the rest of the BIAs. And my final thing was this report or this application request form. We have a paid staff person at our BIA. Every other group does not have this. And now you want them to start filling out more paperwork, whereas we're supposed to be going less red tape. Now you're adding another layer to get more money out of something that we've already, taken for granted, but it's not necessarily the right way. This is a good start. Councillor Harrigan made the motion last summer to start something. I followed through with visiting every BIA. And this is not what we're looking for. This is a good start, but to pass this and say that we're only going to get 4 things, and one of them includes putting garbage cans out of an application to Together CK, this doesn't make any sense. That's all I have. Thank you.
Item 11, consent agenda. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda and placed aside for consideration and debate separately? Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Your Worship. 11B5, please.
11B5. Councillor Crew.
11B9.
Councillor Sakachi.
11B8.
Councillor Harrigan.
11A1, and I believe somebody's already said 11B9, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Yeah, I'm also 11B9.
Okay. Can I get a motion to accept all the other ones? Councillor Bondi, seconded by Councillor Hall. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll start with 11B5.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to bring to everyone's attention, and I would also, I believe I see Tanya over across the way, what they have done in the libraries throughout Chatham-Kent for people who have needed help and may not have wanted to come to the Civic Center or actually come out to go to the public, where our own librarians were able to help numerous people throughout 3,132 appointments is incredible as far as I'm concerned for the library and hooking them up with the community navigators. So I know they're not asking for any money here, but I definitely would like to make sure that we keep this going. This is a great thing with the number of libraries that we have throughout Chatham-Kent. And Tanya and your staff, I'd like to congratulate you. You did a great job this year. Thanks again.
Any other questions relating to that? Next, Councillor Crew, 11B9.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This is a report I requested back in July. We had heard that there were many service requests, 2,000 to be exact, that were just sitting in queue. And that, to me, is very alarming. You know, when we want to provide good customer service. We want to be good counselors. We want to respond to our citizens' requests. So I asked for this report to see, you know, what's happening, why is this happening, what can we do to streamline things. So I want to thank Thomas and his group for putting this together. We talked a lot last week about, you know, the complex needs that and issues that are raised with this report. It's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things. And I think everyone has a role in here. It was interesting, on page 2, it says 29,000 telephone calls are received from the public 24/7 in 2019. There was 21,000 total service requests logged, 9,000 ACRs, which are active citizen requests, and over 3,000 of those related communications were received from council members. So that's really a lot of requests, and Thomas says that's pretty, probably on the generous side. Thomas, I just have a couple questions. One of the things that you said would help is the new ACR system. When are we expecting that to be implemented? Because we did approve the funds for that last year, didn't we?
Thank you, Mayor. That's correct. We did approve the funds. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Kathy Hoffman, whose team is leading that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So right now the RFP is ready to go out the door. So we'll go out and take that process in place. We're looking essentially at utilizing a product that would otherwise be off the shelf, so we don't need to spend extra time trying to tailor it to our needs, which will make a quicker implementation. So we're hoping by fall into November that we would have it implemented.
Okay, good. Thank you. Just bear with me because I have a bunch of notes. One of the things is there's a lot of points of entry for people to put concerns in, and if we could help by streamlining that as counselors, by asking them to use our 1998, thank you, or our CK info email, and that will help streamline things. One of the things we can also do is when citizens contact us, ask them if they have called in and got an ACR number, because it's easy to track. The other thing is I know that staff, they really try hard to please us because we're their boss. So when we call, if somebody's in the system, they will jump the queue and jump ahead of other citizens who have been waiting patiently to have their pothole fixed or whatever they're looking to get done. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be calling and asking questions and doing what we can, but we need to make sure that people are educated and using that process. Let me just say, I think that was, so I do have a notice of motion to help streamline some things that council can do, and I'll bring that at the time when notices of motions come forward. But if we could all just, when we get those contact council forms, reply to all when there's something that we all need to know, like you've responded to it. Don't reply to all to thank us. Just use that, ask who needs to know this, and then send it out. So I think that, you know, if we need to send something on to asking them to get into that streamlined process, it will really help get some of those. We don't even know if a lot of those in the queue are duplicates at this point, because we, you know, when a citizen reaches out, okay, Thomas, can you take care of this? Because we want to look good at doing our job, but we're not doing anybody any favors being efficient by circumventing the system. So if we can all do our part, we can do that. And if we can get the community educated through social media and different things, we can do that as our part. So one other question, Thomas, the financial part of this that is discussed in this report, will that be referred to the budget, and will we have briefing notes then?
Thank you, Mayor. That's correct. You'll have
Okay.
a briefing note this Wednesday. You'll see it.
Okay, so I don't need to refer anything to budget?
That's correct.
Good? Okay, thank you. I don't think I have anything else. Oh, one other question, sorry. I'm sorry. What do other councils do? That was like, councilors are all elected, so they want to please their citizens. So I'm sure you reached out when you're doing this report.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mayor. We talked to about 3 or 4 different municipalities, and I would say that we're somewhat unique. Most other municipalities, councils stay away from all of the operational type issues, and they follow the process to submit. In our case, I know everybody has great intentions and they're trying to do the right things for their constituents, but in other municipalities, we found that all of this interaction on operational type issues is really, they really stay away from.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan?
Thank you. Just through the mayor, just a couple of questions of clarification for those who are reading the report. In the report, you commented that our asset management is funded at 50%. That's an average across all of the asset groups, correct? Okay. And then a more deeper question. There's a comment around some of the challenges, and one of them being that the IES resources are diverted to emergency situations referencing flooding and storms. Do we have an understanding of what the total hours or what the total impact would be for that? I know that's kind of an on-the-spot question, but I would imagine that just recently, given all of the flooding and storms that we've received in Chatham-Kent, that impact would be significant in terms of time.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, absolutely. The point being is that anytime, even this weekend, with all the rain we received, the emergency declarations back in August, in February, when those things occur, everything stops as far as working on these outstanding service requests. So that actually puts us further behind the 8 ball, but you can appreciate that's absolutely the top priority. So we have more than we can handle. The demand is outweighing what we can really supply. And what we've seen with the number of emergencies that we've had is that situation continues to get worse.
Right. And is there any opportunity through training or emergency management processes to involve more departments in the response to that? Like, I know that our emergency services and fire is heavily involved and engineering is heavily involved, but it's right now our emergency situations are very much isolated to those 2 departments. So I imagine that those 2 areas are bearing the brunt of the time and resources when we have a flood or a flooding river, for example.
Thank you, Mayor. That's absolutely correct. We work very closely with fire and emergency services. The skill set that we have in our group, and also the machines, the equipment, they need to be operated, and we have the skilled labor to do that. So almost all of the emergencies we've had people working, around 24/7, looking and operating those machines. If you think back to the emergency in Tilbury with the flooding, those were some of our contractors that were out there. If you look at all the work that we did on Erie Shore Drive, that was all of our team out there trying to move those blocks, position them, and et cetera.
Mm-hmm. So even if we had all the money to catch up on these ACRs, would you say that we have the resources to do so?
Thank you, Mayor. It's really difficult to say. What I put down as a root cause analysis on page 3 is that we're seeing that the requests continue to go up. And one of the first recommendations is our infrastructure. We're only 50% funded. As a result, we have a lot of maintenance on 50% of those other projects. I have 10 projects I should do. We can only do 5. So as a result, the maintenance continues to increase. And every year, all of those assets get 1 year older as well. So, just like an old car, it just continues to fail more often. So that's what we're seeing. Our proposal, you'll see in budget, was to consider a one-year investment. We see what we can do with that, see what we can do to reduce the amount of work, and then determine if it's really needs to be a longer-term solution. So we may add staff, add contractors, whatever the case may be, increase our budget, basically. We're trying to do everything we can to resist that. There's so many factors here. Weather plays such a huge role on our business. And if we had some really nice weather over the winter, we can take those resources and start working at this 2,000. If we have very bad weather and we have weather in the summer that's poor, more emergencies, we are going to fall further behind.
Okay, thank you. I had some questions around the solutioning, but I will wait till Councillor Crew's motion to talk about those.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor, just a question on the service request fax, and I'm not sure what page that's on, not that it really matters. You have a total of 21,500 total service requests logged. Does that include duplicates, or have you removed duplicates from that, or have you identified the number of duplicates within that number?
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely, we've tried to eliminate all the duplicates that we can. It does happen that we get multiple requests for the same issue. We've done our best. I can tell you we don't have a perfect system, though, but we think that's a good number.
Mr. Shropshire?
Just in answer to Councillor Harrigan's statement about the additional resources, we'd be remiss if we didn't recognize the incredible work that the conservation authorities have also been done. They're taking on 24-hour coverage. There's Erie Shore Drive, some of our dike systems and so on. They've been out there with us and the other conservation authorities as well over time to make sure that we can reduce our resourcing and use it where it's most needed, operating the heavy equipment.
Any other questions with that item? Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. I noticed that there was a very tiny little reference on page 6 to the implementation of the 311 system, which will be the number that will replace 360-1998 eventually, and looking forward to that happening this year. Thank you.
Okay, next item, Councillor Sakachi, 11B8.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to the clerk, I just wanted a little bit of clarity. I'm not sure if, hopefully you can help me here, Judy. So the financial implication that's on the bottom of this, so my motion that when it went, that was passed 17-1, said for consideration for the 2020 budget. In the financial implications, if we pass this report as it stands now, when it says that the program is not recommended by EMT for funding in the 2020 budget, does that alter the direction at all if we're passing this in the consent agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is simply an information report that's in the consent agenda, so you're just receiving this for information. My understanding is that there is a briefing note in the budget binder that you will receive on Wednesday, and that will have the financial implications, which you will vote on there. And it'll be the same process for any budget item. You can approve or decline any of those items.
Okay, perfect. And I just had a quick question for through Gord, if you don't mind, Gord. So, is this something that normally it says the recommendation in here? If council were to approve the funding during the 2020 budget deliberations, it would be suggested that a life cycle reserve be set up for the funds, basically, to be carried forward to future years. Is that something that you normally would recommend for an ongoing service? Because to my knowledge, I thought that would be something that would be, if we were doing like a one-time costing or maybe like a pilot program. But is that something that we would normally do for a service like this?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Councillor Scotchy, if you, in any budget, if there's a one-time item, it is fine to, if there's a reserve that can fund that's always fine. In this case, what the suggestion is that it is going to be a base ongoing item, but the reference to the life cycle reserve is to say in year one, if you don't need it, put it away in a reserve so you have 200,000 from that year, and then in year two you'd have 400,000 available, the 200,000 in the base plus the 200,000 that you saved from the previous year. So it allows you to perhaps have a less amount of money in the base that you capture in the good years so that you have them in the bad years. So it's but no, as far as your direct question, I wouldn't recommend just funding it one time and every year coming back to budget asking for one-time funding again. It'd be more advantageous if it was to be approved to put it in the base budget for permanent funding. And with this life cycle reserve, it'll just be carried forward to when there is a larger disaster.
I appreciate that. And I guess I just wanted to clarify, because, I mean, to see this report again is, I had some questions about, just because back in May when I first initially talked about this, I was kind of, suggested that it wasn't something that would be beneficial that we'd be looking into. And that same conversation happened in August when it came about, but it was still passed. So to see that it's up for discussion again, when I would have thought it would have just been included on the budget line, and then we would have had the opportunity to discuss that, would be something that I've foreseen. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple people, and that's how they interpreted it as well. So to see this information report again, to me, it's, even though we've already been told, I've been told personally multiple times, it's not recommended. But to see it's not recommended again, I'm just unsure of why that report would have had to come again to the, and I know that's not on yourself, it's just that my understanding how the motion passed, it would be recommended on the budget for 2020, up for us to deliberate on that exact incident. Sorry. More comments than anything. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mayor Kent. Yeah, I guess further to Councillor Scacci, I'm just wondering why we have this report in the first place. As I recall, the motion passed 17-1. So here we have a report saying, well, please don't do it when it comes to budget. So what's the point of this? I'm sure there is one. I'm just curious as to, a motion passed, administration doesn't like it very much. That happens from time to time. So then we get a report in the consent agenda saying, we don't really like this idea very much. So is that going to happen every time a motion passes that administration doesn't necessarily agree with? I'm just curious as to why this landed in front of us. It's pretty simple.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, the motion asked for us to develop a sandbag program. There are a number of asks in there. For example, what we did was we looked internally, externally. We could have came back to you with saying we want to hire additional people to administer this. So our intent of this was to address all of the other issues associated with the program. That was the intent of the report, so that when it came to budget, you would be able to make a decision to say, well, I know it's going to be an internal program or external program. So that was the intent. As far as the financial implications, this was something we're just giving council information to say absolutely it'll be deferred to budget. The information you'll receive on Wednesday, it is not included in our recommendations. So it's just advanced information on Wednesday. It's council's decision at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. That makes. I just assumed this would be part of the budget discussions, that this information would be discussed at budget, which is why we have budget. But I guess this is a prelude to our budget deliberation. So, okay, thanks. I still don't understand why we got it, but thank you.
Thank you. Council, we actually discussed this in the previous report that we just discussed in detail at the management team. And we actually considered just putting it in as a part of the briefing note for the budget. And our intent was, as Mr. Kelly just described, if you want additional information, we did not want to take in the middle of our budget deliberations the opportunity to explain what a new program would look like. So we apologize if there was confusion. There was absolutely not an attempt to say we don't like the recommendation, we're not going forward. That's not the intent. The intent was give council the information in advance so you know what the program is, and then you're discussing a budget when you know what the full implications are, rather than have to take that time. That was the intent, and apologies if we didn't get that right. We will make some double down efforts to make sure that when there's a motion made, we understand what your council's expectations are so we know when it's going to be brought back and it's not going to be a surprise. But thank you for raising the concern.
Councillor Scacci.
Thank you, Mr. Shropshire. I just wanted to comment that I completely respect the fact of this coming as an information report. It's just that through multiple conversations, I could tell that it hasn't been recommended. This is something that I can tell that there's been, saying that this isn't something that they recommend for us to do. So to have those conversations and then the motion be passed. And I completely respect the report that's been given, but the financial implications that in closing to stimulate the fact once again that it's not recommended to me, just kind of raise my eyebrows a little bit, because I've already heard that about I'd say about 4 times, right? So that's where I'm coming from respectfully. Not the fact that I don't really appreciate the great detail that went into the actual report. It's just, to me, it was an added line once again, to say how they don't recommend it going forward. And just in closing, I just want to say we have multiple areas in our whole municipality that are flooding uncontrollably right now. And there is literally nothing that we can do. We're not doing anything from a mitigation side because we can't, because it's private property. To me, as our governance, when we have these issues that keep coming to us, I think that every other municipality around us is doing something. And it would make me feel a lot better as a councillor to say, you know what, we understand that you're in a very bad situation. We can at least provide you some sandbags to try to protect the integrity of your home. And that's basically the logistics of my concern, and I'll leave it at that. And I really appreciate the report, and I very much respect all the detail that went into it, but that was just my concern, the recommendation part. So thank you very much.
Okay, last one, Councillor Harrigan, 11A1.
Hi, thank you. Through to the mayor, just a quick question based on the deputation that was provided. Can somebody comment if this is normal uptake on the drainage loan debenture program?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So it's a bit misleading, Councillor Harrigan. What happens sometimes is there's a process of assembling a number of tile loans. So because I didn't count them, but there's 7 or 8 of them tonight, it appears like it's a very heavy uptake for this meeting, but I don't think we've been here with another tile loan debenture for a while. So I don't have the numbers for the year, but typically in the year I would speculate we'd have about 20. So if that helps clarify the presenter or the question asked. I was going to email it out, but I don't have to now.
No, that's all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to accept A1, B5, B8, and B9? Councillor Oche, seconded by Councillor Crew. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, item 12, notices of motion. Councillor Crew, followed by Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor Crew, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the February 10th, 2020 council meeting for discussion and voting. To improve the efficiency and time to respond to public service requests, it's recommended that Chatham-Kent residents submit all service requests to 519-360-1998 or ckinfo@chathamkent.ca to properly log, track, respond, and prioritize the concern in the active citizen requests. 2, public concerns identified in the council contact form. Council will advise the member of the public to utilize the service request process as a first step. And 3, that staff develop an escalation process whereby outstanding IES service requests are discussed at council meetings for priority changes, public awareness, and voting.
Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Your Worship. I, Councillor Mark Oche, bring forward the following motion that Chatham-Kent research a notifying system that can notify certain parts of CK and or all of Chatham-Kent when there is an update with urgency to a community or an all-out emergency. You could start off by looking at the Tecumseh alert system. I have their number here for research. Please bring back for voting February 10th, 2020, and if the motion passes, I'd like to see the recommendation March 23rd, 2020. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Hi, Councillor. There we go. I, Councillor Trevor Thompson, hereby provide notice. I'll bring the following motion to the February 10th council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority and the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority, along with other conservation authorities, have been protecting people and conserving and restoring watersheds with local communities for over 50 years. And whereas municipalities must work together to ensure resilient and healthy watersheds for residents, and whereas conservation authorities will be important partners in concrete and cost-effective initiatives to address climate change, therefore be it resolved that the municipality of Chatham-Kent supports the important role conservation authorities provide to local communities in delivering watershed management programs. Thank you.
Councillor Scotchy.
I, Councillor Anthony Sakachi, here provide notice that I'll bring the following forward the following motion at the February 10th council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas the Blenheim Business Park is a municipally owned business park which has existed since before amalgamation, and whereas the municipality has invested significant taxpayers' resources in servicing the Blenheim Business Park in order to provide competitively priced industrial sites to attract new industry to Chatham-Kent, and whereas in early 2017, in the midst of interest from business and potential development within the business park, the municipality received correspondence from the province indicating that endangered species was reportedly within the business park, and whereas the municipalities, in effort to ensure business park would be capable of its intended use as an economic driver, needed to take various steps, including swapping land with the intended developer and undertaking various species protection works, which to date cost the municipality just over $100,000. And whereas a significant portion of the Blenheim Business Park remains vacant as the municipality continues to navigate the permit process and legislation protection identified by the ministry with respect to these lands, therefore be it resolved that 1, Mayor or administration write to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks requesting a resolution to this matter, and 2, administration report back to council with all options for resolving this matter.
Okay, item 13, tender awards.
Item 13A, contract T19-410, Chatham-Kent Housing Asset Janitorial Services.
Councillor Oche.
I move this motion.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
I'll second the recommendation.
Any questions? Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is, has this been provided before this service?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The answer is yes.
Okay. The company that we are selecting tonight, the price that they've given us is considerably less than what the other tenders were. How does that compare to the job that was done prior to this year?
I can't answer that question, Mayor Caniff. I'm not familiar with the existing. I could get you the information. I'm not familiar with the current price is. This is the new tendered price with the option to negotiate, as the report explains, on 1-year renewals for the second and for the third year. So the amount that you see is the total amount, the maximum it can be for 3 years.
Okay. I guess, the price is, at least a third of what the next bidder is, and I guess a red flag goes up a little bit to say, are we getting a good deal for our dollar, I guess, type thing.
Social housing managers and I discussed that very thing, and they're comfortable recommending it, especially given the fact that we get a chance to review it after the first year.
Okay. But we did have a contract doing it prior to this.
Yes, we had someone doing it. I'm not even familiar if it's the same contract or a different contract.
Okay.
This formalizes it into a 3-year agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions. Oh, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just a couple of questions. What exactly are the duties? Presumably janitorial services, but when I read the report, it sounds like perhaps the turnover would be a large part of the duties, which would presumably, when somebody leaves, janitorial services would come in, maybe even paint, I don't know, clean it. So I guess my question is, if we have a fixed amount on a contract, is there a predictability as to the turnover? Maybe it's none, maybe it's 400. or is that not the primary janitorial responsibilities of this contract? And if so, what are the responsibilities? Are they vacuuming, cleaning? Like, I'm just curious as to what the actual job is that we're paying $300,000 for.
So, Mayor Caniff, my understanding is that we're paying for the service to clean the general areas of the building that would not be part of the private residences and so on. So
like laundry facilities?
Correct, and hallways and things like that. But this is not to cover the turnover of the units. That's handled by the or the asset managers when they do those turnovers.
Oh, okay. Sorry? Oh, sorry, April.
Ms. Redyke?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So part of what happens with our social housing units is that we are the landlords of all of our municipal social housing. So there are significant common areas. So Tim has alluded to some of that. But that it also includes, we have a number of our units or our facilities that have kitchens and common kind of community rooms, those types of things as well, that we are required through, the province as being good landlords to maintain those areas and to keep all of those areas clean. So all the hallways, all the kitchens, in the community rooms, not the tenants' kitchens, right. Our kitchens in the community rooms, as well as any cleanup that needs to happen for someone to move in. So turnover is probably, I don't have those stats in front of me, but we always have units that are in constant kind of turnover, so at any given time. So for 3 years, so this looks to me to be $100,000 a year. In terms of the number of units that we have, the number of facilities that we have, there'd be a lot of cleaning to be done for that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. No, I didn't think it was a bad deal. I was just kind of curious as to what the actual job was. But further to Councillor Foss's question, I am kind of curious as to the difference between the winner of the tender at effectively $300,000 and the fourth at $668,000. So are these guys reading the same tender? It seems they're miles apart. Just from reading this, you think, Jesus, are they doing the same job, right?
It does, Mayor Caniff. They bid on the same package.
One guy's just got a much nicer car.
There is a fair, just further to April's comments as well, there's a fair bit of gray in this as well, because when the units turn over, sometimes it's a cleaning activity, but sometimes it's a construction activity. So it becomes blurred, and I can't help but wonder if maybe some contractors looked at it and said, ooh, this could be a lot more work than we're planning on, where others looked at it and said, maybe it's less work. So
the winner of the tender at $300,000 for 3 years, if they did run into some construction overruns, would they be able to come back to us and say, you know what, we didn't foresee holes in walls, et cetera? Or is this a strict contract and because presumably, I didn't read the tender, of course, but I'm sure it's very specific as to what the requirements are.
So again, it's a cleaning contract. It's not a construction contract. So the construction repair piece is a separate piece and would be handled from the life cycle so that's a different matter. So the expectation would be that they would provide reasonable cleaning services for this to meet this contract. Beyond that, if there's construction, if there's holes in the walls, if there's that sort of thing, that's a different matter.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious because there was such a wide variance between the...
Councillor Scotchy?
Just wanted to, there is, in reading this though, there is subject to contractor performance. So obviously if you're not content, I know there is a big discrepancy in the billing aspect, but obviously if, you as management, if you're not happy, you can work through this the difficulties and try to come to a common point. So I want to make sure that that's very clear. We need to be happy that they came at that price, because you also have the ability to work through the challenges if there are some. So I did read that in a recommendation aspect. So I just wanted to kind of mention that that you still have the ability to ensure that they're doing the appropriate job for the position, right? So
That's correct.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 14, Finance, Budget, and Information Technology Services.
Item 14A, 2019 BMA Municipal Study. We have a presentation by Matt Torrance, Director of Financial Services, and it looks like accompanied by Amy McClellan.
Good evening, Mayor Caniff and members of council. My name is Matt Torrance, and I am the Director of Financial Services. I am joined by Amy McClellan, our Manager of Revenue. Tonight, we're going to provide a presentation on the highlights of the 2019 BMA Municipal Study, which had 110 Ontario municipalities participate. Chatham-Kent takes part in this study annually, which provides us an opportunity to benchmark ourselves against other municipalities. A comparison is made between Chatham-Kent and 7 other municipalities in this presentation, which were selected from a relevant group of municipalities based on geographic and socioeconomic factors. The following slides will show how Chatham-Kent compares to our 7 chosen comparators, which is shown as the group average, and to all 110 municipalities who participated in the study, represented as the survey average. The BMA study primarily focuses on 3 areas: socioeconomic, financial, and cost of service and affordability indicators. There are several factors that affect a municipality's financial condition. The socioeconomic area captures items such as population change, population density, and taxes as a percentage of income. The financial area captures items such as tax revenues, tax expenditures per capita, debt, and reserves. The cost of service and affordability indicators compare Chatham-Kent's cost of services and taxation to other municipalities who participated in the study. Based on 2016 census data, Chatham-Kent's population decreased 2% between 2011 and 2016, which is the second largest population decline in the group. During the same time period, the population increased an average of 1.5%, while the average population for all 110 municipalities who participated in the study increased by an average of 4.5%. It should be noted that these numbers are reflective of the previous 2 census in 2011 and 2016. More recent non-census projections, including the BMA study, which uses manifold data mining, and the Municipal Comprehensive Review Report from Watson and Associates, indicate that Chatham-Kent's population has rebounded to an estimate between 105 and 106,000 in 2018. Based on the census figures, Chatham-Kent's population decreased between 2006 and 2016. Non-census estimates, as I mentioned, have indicated that the population numbers have since rebounded. BMA uses the manifold data mining to estimate population figures outside of census years, which are represented in red on the graph. The estimate shows a sharp increase in 2017, followed by slight declines in 18 and 19. The Watson and Associates economist estimates are not reflected on this graph, but they estimate a smooth straight line transition increase from 16 to 18. A significant challenge that Chatham-Kent faces is its population density. Population density represents a number of individuals per square kilometer. As you can see in the table, Chatham-Kent has a low population density, meaning there are fewer people to pay for required infrastructure such as roads, bridges, water, and wastewater. Chatham-Kent has a population density of 43 people per square kilometer. London has 978, Sarnia 449, and Windsor 1,571. Since 2011, Chatham-Kent has been faced with an assessment shift, with the tax burden being shifted away from commercial, industrial, and multi-res and onto farm. This has occurred as a result of factory closings along with Assessment Review Board appeals, which many big box stores have undertaken to reduce their assessment. While commercial, industrial, and multi-res properties have seen assessment decreases, Farmland has seen significant increases in their value. In 2011, farm properties represented 5.7% of the tax burden. In 2019, this number has grown to 11%. In 2019, Chatham-Kent had the 8th lowest assessment per capita of the 110 municipalities who participated in the BMA study, with roughly $102,000 of assessment per capita. Assessment per capita takes Chatham-Kent's total weighted assessment base divided by our population. In the group of 7 comparator municipalities, Chatham-Kent is the second lowest, ahead of only Windsor. Household income is a measure which indicates a community's ability to pay for the services provided by the municipality. Chatham-Kent is on the low end of the municipalities who participated in the survey and is below both the survey and group average, with an average household income of about $80,000. Now we're going to look at financial indicators. The financial position of a municipality is a key indicator of its health. The financial position is determined by taking the financial assets of the municipality less its liabilities. Chatham-Kent has a positive financial position of $1,291 per capita, significantly above the survey average of $517 and slightly higher than the group average of $1,036. Prior to 2014, Chatham-Kent had a negative financial position, meaning that our liabilities exceeded our financial assets. Beginning in 2014, Chatham-Kent moved to a positive financial position of $241 per capita, which has continued to increase, reaching $1,291 in 2018. The asset consumption ratio of a municipality is an indicator of the age of its assets. The older the overall age of its assets, the greater the ratio. The tax consumption ratio includes those assets that are funded through property tax dollars, while the water and wastewater reserves are funded through the PUC rates. Chatham-Kent's asset consumption ratio is higher than both the survey and group averages. Fast-growing municipalities typically have a lower asset consumption ratios as they continue to build new infrastructure to support new growth. The level of reserves required by a municipality will vary for a number of reasons, which include services that are provided, age and condition of the infrastructure, service levels that are desired by the population, and the general economic conditions. Reserve comparative analysis measures a municipality's reserves as a percentage of its own source revenue. Chatham-Kent had reserve balances funded through tax of 79%, which is higher than both the group and survey averages. Chatham-Kent's water and wastewater reserves are below both the group and survey average. Water reserves have decreased since 2017 from 21.5% to 13%, while wastewater reserves have increased since 17 from 16% to 24%. Chatham-Kent continues to make significant progress in lowering its debt. Chatham-Kent's overall outstanding per capita debt and tax debt are both above the group average but below the survey average. A few key points to be noted here are approximately 56% of Chatham-Kent's debt is related to water and wastewater. A large portion of the tax debt is funded by senior levels of government. The actual amount of debt funded directly by Chatham-Kent property taxes is approximately $143 per capita. Many municipalities aim to have a debt-to-reserve ratio of 1, as this is deemed financially prudent by rating agencies. A ratio of 1 denotes that for every $1 of debt, there is $1 of reserves. Chatham-Kent has a healthier debt-to-reserve ratio than the survey average of 0.9. A ratio of 0.5 means that for every $1 of reserves, Chatham-Kent has 50 cents of debt. This has improved since 2017 when Chatham-Kent's ratio was 0.6. Taxes receivable are the taxes that have been billed and are owing by residents and businesses in Chatham-Kent but have not been paid. Taxes receivable are a sign of a municipality's health and its residents' ability to pay their tax bill. Taxes receivable in Chatham-Kent have decreased since 2017 from 4.8% to 2.5%. Chatham-Kent's taxes receivable are the third lowest in the group average, below both the survey and group averages. I'm now going to pass it off to Amy, who's going to complete the presentation.
comparing Chatham-Kent's water and wastewater costs for residential households, we are close to the survey average and above the group average, with only Windsor and Sudbury being higher in the group comparators. Chatham-Kent is above the survey average and the group average due to the fact that we have a significant amount of infrastructure, which is spread over a wide geographical area. In comparison, Windsor has a total of 3 water and wastewater plants, but in Chatham-Kent we have a total of 14 plants. A water and wastewater comparison for industrial water usage shows that Chatham-Kent is below both the group and survey average, with only Sarnia having a lower industrial water and wastewater cost within the group. Comparing single-family detached homes, the taxes paid in Chatham-Kent are below both the survey and group average for a similar house in other municipalities. For example, if you purchase a house in Chatham-Kent that is worth $200,000, you could go to London and purchase that exact same house, and it may cost you $300,000. So while you hear that London's tax rate is lower, you are paying slightly less taxes in Chatham-Kent than you would be in London for the same house. Chatham-Kent does not have a significant number of multi-residential high-rises. However, the taxes paid per unit in Chatham-Kent are above the survey and group average within this class. When comparing the tax burden on a commercial building, Chatham-Kent is above the survey average but below the group average for taxes paid per square foot. Over the last several years, most recently in 2019, Council has been reducing the industrial tax rate through tax policy. As noted in this slide, Chatham-Kent's industrial taxes per square foot is substantially lower than both the group and survey average. The vast majority of industrial properties in Chatham-Kent are older and have a depreciated assessment value. The lower assessment value with which the tax rate is multiplied against results in lower taxes per square foot. As new industrial properties are constructed, this indicator will increase. When comparing both taxes and water and wastewater costs, Chatham-Kent is below both the group and survey average. Chatham-Kent has the 15th lowest cost of services in the survey of 110 municipalities. With Chatham-Kent having one of the lowest income per household ratings in the study, the property tax and water as a percentage of income is above both the group and survey average, even though, as noted in the previous slide, Chatham-Kent has one of the lowest costs of services in the survey.
Any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to accept the report? Councillor Latimer, seconded by Councillor Sakachi. We'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 14B, October 2019 Budget Variance Forecast.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Yes, actually. Am I on? Oh, sorry, I'm pushing the wrong one. There, I am on. For this report, I'd like to defer it to budget without.
Okay.
If I can get a seconder on that.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Solomon.
Yes.
Any questions related to the Councillor C. McGregor?
I would just say that within this report, there's recommendations which involve a 0.33 tax increase within this report, and that it. Or sorry, no, that's the next one I'm coming to. Sorry, this is the one that is in suggesting that we use the extra. Let me use your notes here in the variance that with the extra money that we have there, that they're looking at doing the project of the drains and looking the road drainage. I'm sorry, I couldn't get it up fast enough to get the report up in front of me. And at this point, I think that with the downloading from the province and everything else we have to look at this point before we earmark money into a certain project, that it should come to budget when we have a fulsome discussion of all the other costs that are coming down on us at this point. So I would like it to go to budget.
Okay. Any other questions related to that? Mr. Brown, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the $2,260 are actually roadside drainage expenses that took place in 2019. So what would happen is if this went to budget, so the expenses are actually already going to be going to budget, and this would basically alleviate those expenses from hitting the budget for 2020. So those expenses already did take place in 2019.
Was that passed in 2019?
So those are the typical roadside drainage assessments, and Tim can probably speak to the type of expenses that they are, but they're normal expenses.
Because it says projected 219 surplus to be transferred.
So the overall surplus.
So is this something we've already passed, or is this just something that's done and now we're transferring over?
So right now we're projecting at year end we're going to have about a $2.45 million surplus, about $2,450,000 surplus.
Yes.
And what this would be doing is taking part of that surplus and applying it to the expenses that took place in 2019 that would typically roll forward into the 2020 budget.
That's fine. I think it's still, if we're dealing with a surplus and everything we have to do, I still feel that it needs to go to budget, and we need to have discussion about some of the other things that we're facing that's going to come in the budget discussion in the next few days. Thanks.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote. Councillor Solomon.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-1.
Item 15, Chief Administrative Office.
Item 15A, 2019 Ontario Volunteer Service Award nominations. Your Worship, this report's been before Council before, and Councillor Hall encouraged us to go back and ask for a larger sampling or a number of nominations, and those have been included in the revised report.
Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Thank you, Don, and to Amy Wilcox for looking at this again, and I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Oche. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Dan. Thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 16, Community Human Services.
Item 16A, 2020 Tourism Initiatives, request from reserve.
Councillor Finn.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
Councillor Oche.
I'll second that.
Questions? Councillor Solomon.
Yes, these are 2020 tourism initiatives. Through your worship, to whoever wants to answer this, we have a 2020 budget presentation very shortly, and we have a 2020 budget session very shortly after that. I know the money's in reserves, but that doesn't alter the fact that we're on the eve of budget, and I don't know why we're doing it before the budget discussions, or at least the budget presentation.
Ms. Redyke.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So part of what tourism has done historically, year over year, is money that comes into them through things. A good example would be the mayor's golf tournament. They put all of this funding that we received in through the year into reserve, and that reserve was established specifically for tourism initiatives. And so then every year we come back at some point, it just happens to be today, to let council know of the money that we have brought in through 2019 through various initiatives. This is what we are going to be doing with it in 2020. So it's almost a crossover year over year over year. So certainly Shannon is here. If there are any additional questions, she can certainly address that as well.
I don't have any questions with respect to the use of it, but the question is the timing of it, is really what I was asking.
Councillor Kirkwood-Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a bit of a cautionary note with regard to the fourth initiative, the tourism website redevelopment. And I'm recalling a deputation that was made a few months ago by Rob Nelson, who talked about a new initiative being developed called Connecting to CK. And I just wondered whether there had been any collaboration with this particular group, particularly around the development of the CK calendar that is being developed by 3 individual business folks, Giggett and Abstract Marketing, in consultation with local media. And I'm always concerned about avoiding duplication and just wondered whether there was an opportunity to receive a formal update on the collaboration that's, if any, has been going on with this other group.
Mr. Shropshire.
Thank you, Worship. So yes, there has been ongoing consultation with Rob Nelson and his team. Their plans have changed a little bit over the course of the last year, but they basically prioritized the 3 different initiatives they wanted to do. The first one was an events calendar, community calendar. I don't believe that's a duplication, although I'm going to defer to Shannon if she's got some additional comments. But our intent was to actually recommend funding from the grant program, council grant program. In order to do that, we have to come back to council and actually re-establish terms of reference, to broaden the terms of reference to more closely align with council priorities. The intent is to bring that back the first meeting in February, and then to have recommendations come forward to council. And there would be a recommendation based on a preliminary consultation to support the Connecting to 2CK initiative. So I'd have to defer to Shannon if she believes that there's or April, to see if there's any other potential conflict, but I believe this was specific to tourism initiatives.
Ms. Reed-Dyke.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So part of tourism's role is to really look at bringing people from outside of Chatham-Kent into Chatham-Kent. And part of the goal of this being on, the World Wide Web is to do that with as much ease as possible. So certainly I see those 2 things as different as well. Some of the events calendar was really those local events. The work that tourism does is spread the word about Chatham-Kent, about the great place that Chatham-Kent is to come and visit. We want them to stay. We want to increase overnight trips so that they are spending dollars here. And part of the initiative to do that is to improve things on our website so that we can entice people from right across the province and the U.S. and everywhere else to come and visit CK. So unless Shannon has anything to add to that, she might have some more information specific to the calendar question.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly, we're very willing to discuss and have discussions when that comes back to council. Any integration of community calendar, that's not a problem. But as you've just heard, moving forward, the website is really to make it more robust. So some of those plugins would include being able to do an itinerary and that sort of thing. And that is very separate from the community calendar.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor. I'm actually just on the Chatham-Kent website right now to look for it. Is there currently a Visit CK?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, visitck.ca is the website, and that's the URL that's used. It links you to tourism. So under the chatham-kent.ca, you can go under tourism, and that is the visitck.ca website.
Okay, so I would just suggest a little bolder identification on the website. And when this, like if this goes through and this website is revamped or updated, will it be better searchable than our actual CK website? Because if you try to Google within our own website, it's very difficult to get to information. So will it be easy to get information off of your new site?
Through you, Mayor, I can say the plan is to make it as very user-friendly as possible. Testing will be done to ensure that anybody using the site can certainly make sure that they're looking for and getting what they want.
Thank you. I would hope so, and maybe it could be a launching for other things to come for the rest of our website. Thank you, Shannon.
Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just to follow up Councillor Kirkwood-White and Councillor McGregor's concerns about the website, I would hope that you would be doing due diligence to work with those resources that are already available. I had thought we were updating our website in general, and that this would be part of it. But also in our community rounds, we've been out visiting with the mayor, different marketing groups or companies that specialize in website development. They've given us some really good ideas and suggestions, and I would encourage you to use them as resources, and perhaps even consider them as part of this consultant. That takes me back to the other, the tourism wayfinding. While I do agree you need the community wayfinding system, it says you need the consultant to review the industry needs. That's been done ad nauseum here in Chatham-Kent. So I again want to make sure that you use what you already have on your shelves. And the other is that when it comes to wayfinding, we all know our transit system is currently being reworked and updated. I would hope that that would be taken into consideration as well, and this isn't preempting that. So in other words, it'll come back through the consultant, well, it isn't sufficient, this is what you need. Well, we already know that. So I just want to caution that we're not using this money prematurely when we're just going to get told what we already know. And basically told the resolutions we anticipate we're going to be doing over the next couple, 2-3 years. So that's it.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-1. Did you want to change that, Councillor Thompson? Is to a yes? Okay, so it's 18-0.
Item 16B, Great Lakes Gymnastics Center Vendor Services.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Finn.
I'll second.
Any questions? Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to, sorry, Kelly? Sorry. I didn't see it anywhere, but I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. Do we have numerous gymnastic centers that are part of this already?
Through you, Mayor Caniff. Yes, we do. We have them in various communities as well as in Chatham proper.
All right, thank you.
Councillor McGrail.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Kelly, real quick. So if another gymnastics studio would like to become on this group or part of this, they just need to approach you or contact you, and they can also start the proceedings to be in this position too.
Through you, Mayor Caniff, yes.
Absolutely. The reason this one's a little bit different and it's come to council's attention is because it's a staff from the municipality that actually owns and operates it. So as part of our rules and regulations, we bring that report to council to be approved before proceeding.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 16C, motion by Councillor Hall regarding harm reduction, improvements to our needle syringe program.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I won't read through the entire motion tonight. It's quite lengthy, but I'm sure everybody had a chance to listen to it and read it. So if I can get a seconder, I just have a couple comments to make.
Councillor Crew. Okay, Councillor Hall, go ahead.
Thank you. So a lot of the information from the motion stems from an information report that we received last month from the Public Health Unit about harm reduction, obviously focusing in on points surrounding the needle syringe program and other initiatives surrounding needles in our community. I just want to draw Council's attention to this part of the motion specifically. Businesses partnering with the program are facing challenges with the lack of adequate disposal supplies, putting a burden on their business and employees. This point was really illustrated really well, I thought, during a deputation last month as well by Delynn Marlette, who owns Shoppers Drug Mart in Wallaceburg. She's takes part in the program and does great work with that. But she's facing issues with it and having to spend money out of her own pocket to properly dispose of the needles that get brought to her business. So that's not right, and I think it needs to be looked at. So I'm hoping for council support tonight. I've spoken with Dr. Rietdijk about this ahead of time too, so I think they're prepared to do this work and take a look at it. So hoping for council support.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 17, infrastructure and engineering services.
Item 17A, 2020 capital budget.
Councillor Solomon.
Voice on there. Thank you, Your Worship. I'd move that the report be received for information and be referred to budget for approval.
Councillor C. McGregor.
I'll second that.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Just a question about the functionality of doing that. So would that be referring it to the budget committee to be approved by the budget committee? Okay. And are we able to do, is that something functionally we can do? I know we haven't done it before, but can you approve capital projects within the budget process? Question to staff.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So we have done it in a variety of ways in the past. If I go back 5+ years ago, we used to, in budget, just allocate a dollar amount, and then a report would come back in March with the details of all the capital budget items. There was actually a motion approved by council to switch it to the current way. That happened about 5 years ago, recommending that this report come first. And secondarily, I think it's important that the details of the report be approved as far as what of the projects and stuff in a council meeting and not a budget meeting. As far as in the end where the money's coming from, that's fine to be deferred to budget, because it's all, if at budget you decide you got to cut $1 million out of this budget, well then we'll work on the priorities and cut items out of it. But I think it would be important in a regular council meeting for council to approve the projects. For example, at the very last meeting, we were talking about Indian Creek Road extension. That's the #1 recommended project that's in this report.
So to clarify, functionally, even if you approve this tonight, you can still change the amount of funding that went in. It just wouldn't change the ranking of the projects.
Correct. We can't start those ones at the end of the list, especially until we know that the funding is there approved in the budget in the next couple weeks.
Okay. Councillor Harrigan.
I believe my question was already answered by Councillor McGregor, but I just wanted to make a comment that it's always in the 2 years that I've seen the capital plan been my assumption that we're approving this plan at budget, we're finalizing the dollars, and then if we approve more or less, the ranking of these capital items is how we would decide what it is that we would be funding. Just want to verify with staff that that's their assumption as well.
Thank you. That's exactly correct. And I also wanted to point out that the sooner the IES group gets the projects approved, one of the things that we've conveyed with the infrastructure committee is that it allows us to get the tenders out earlier ahead of the game too. So there's a financial advantage if we can get that approval tonight rather than waiting even a month. Thank you.
So just to comment, sorry, while I still have the floor, that I'm not in support of what's on the floor now, only because I think it's important that we are approving the ranking outside of budget. I think if we're really nitty-gritty looking at the ranking within budget, then that opens up the door to possibly saying, okay, how much can we cut? Can we cut 16? Can we cut 15? Can we cut 14? And I don't think that's a fair way to do policy and capital projects. So that's just my comment.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can remember back a few years ago exactly what Gord said, is that we wanted to move it up so that we could deal with it prior to budget, because prior to that, we would just approve a dollar amount and not the projects. Now we've done exactly what we've said that we want done, and now we're going to take a step backward if we approve this motion tonight. So my feeling is that we should approve the motion as is and move forward. Thank you.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor, and I understand where you're coming from there, and it's been brought to my attention that the motion that was brought many years ago was brought so that the report could come in advance so that we could talk about it. Then it would be go to budget, and budget starts this week, and so it's within 4 weeks that we will be able to move ahead. So I don't see any great advantage to them being able to work on this in advance. And what happens if at budget time they start to work on this, and then at budget time we decide to change it and we take monies away? So then what happens then? So then they've gone to work that is wasted. So referring it at that point and receiving this information, receiving this report for information makes more sense to me than it does to set it in writing in case it is changed, and then we have to deal with it again then.
Okay. Seeing no other questions. Oh, so we got Councillor Bondi, then Councillor Oche, and then we'll go to Councillor Solomon, then Mr. Shropshire would like to comment as well.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but because we are just before this thing gets away from me, if we vote on this and it's kind of gone, is this an appropriate time to ask some questions about these projects? Okay, great. Well, then I'll ask on 2 items, please. The first one...
sorry, Councillor Bondi, maybe if we could, because if this is successful, then we'll be talking about during budget. If this is not successful, then we're going to go back to the original motion. Then we'll go back to your questions, then addressing...
And if not, my questions would come at budget when...
Correct, yes. So if this fails and we go to the other, I'll come back to you first to ask those questions.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question like Councillor Bondi, so I'll wait.
Okay, Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Mine's on process. So if there was a motion that we do this way, do we need 2/3 to overturn it and do it a different way?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little confused also. So I understand that the recommendations that were in the report is how we've done it. I understand that there's one on the floor now just to receive for information, refer to the budget deliberations, sorry. We can talk about the money in budget committee, but it would be council that would approve the projects, in my opinion. And therefore, if we just receive now, we talk about the money in budget, but then we'd have to bring a report back to council to determine which projects we're doing. So that will have to be a decision of council. So we won't be able to determine the projects. You can determine the amount of money. And so if we don't approve the projects now, once we determine and the budget's finalized, we'll have to come back to council in March or April, delaying some of the projects likely in order to determine which ones we're doing. If we just receive it for information and not talk about the projects this evening. I'm not sure if Gord or Thomas have anything to add to that, but that's my explanation.
Anything to add, Mr. Kelly? Okay, Councillor Finn?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. My concern is number 3. If we approve the recommendations as listed, where it says an additional 510 or 17,000 be added to the 2020 capital budget, can that then be changed, that budget?
Yes, we added that into the capital budget. That normally, a motion item like that normally would not be in the capital budget. So that is a little bit of a different situation right here. What actual council directed back in June when council approved the DMAF application was to add $2.4 million to the budget every year for the next 10 years to fund our 60% of the $40 million of projects that are going to be completed. EMT has recommended that in the budget that this be lowered to $517,000 as a start of a phase-in. The budget's the budget, so I guess approving whether this 517, whether item 3 gets approved tonight or not, I'm not quite as worried about because you're going to debate it at budget anyway. It's more the standard capital projects where Chris and his team would just like to get moving on the projects. That is, I think, more of a concern about delaying.
Can I ask for a friendly amendment then that we look at?
We'll wait on this. Okay. If this fails, then we'll be going back to the questions related to the original motion then. Mr. Shropshire, followed by Councillor Solomon is the final.
I think the clerk asked the question, is just trying to get clarity if the intent of this is to have all of the discussion on all of the listing and prioritization of the items in addition to the finances, which I've just understood from Councillor Solomon and Councillor McGregor is the case, then that's clear. If it was something different, as was indicated by some of the other questions, then I think that would cause us some problems. But if that's the intent of the motion, then I think the clerk should explain where the concern is. Thanks.
You guys continue on.
Yes. So, Councillor Solomon, you can say I've just been asked for there's a little discussion going on to clarify. Would you like to make your final comments now or wait until here? Okay. So we're going to defer this till later in the meeting when they're ready to discuss. Okay.
The point I'd like to make is the delay is till February. That's four weeks if maximum. No, that's not a relevant delay. Secondly, we haven't even had the budget presentation yet. I'm the one who brought the motion, 5 years ago? Because I wanted to get the information in advance so we could think about it and consider it instead of having it on a meeting tonight, because if we don't put this to budget, I'm going to go through each one of these and ask questions on them. I've got a whole bunch of check marks here, and I think we should vote on some of them individually if we're going to do it that way. And that's what I'm going to bring a motion to do as soon as that's done. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think this should be looked at as part of the overall budget. We fool ourselves into thinking that we just pass a capital budget and it doesn't have any effect. Well, it does. And we don't have any idea yet, at least I don't, have any idea what projected increase there's going to be. And I think we should know that before we start making capital budget decisions. It may be that we've got a really bad year. I don't know, because we haven't even had the budget presentation yet. So what I thought we would have an opportunity to do, oh, by the way, isn't this budget going to be televised for the first time? So I thought it was perfect. Now you got the information, you can think about it, give it some deep thought. There may be ones on here that you go, why are we doing that in my ward? I don't really want it. Or if people have come to me and said, it's not the right timing for it, or whatever. But at least we would be able to give it enough thought. It's going to be televised so the public can see it. And my recollection is at the end of each budget, the budget chairman says, okay, now we've got the recommendation to council. You open a council meeting. So you're not delaying it to April or March. You're going to have a council meeting at the end of the budget, at which point you'll be able to make the decision. You don't need to make it in January before you even get a budget presentation. Like maybe I haven't been involved in the discussions, and 17 others have, and they know exactly what the presentation is going to be on what projected increase is. If you do, maybe you don't need this, but I don't. I don't know what the budget presentation is going to say, and I don't think maybe the budget chairman does, but I don't think anybody else does. And so I think it's prudent to have this now. I think it's great to have the information well in advance. It's not going to change the rankings at this point, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss it in budget where we don't have an agenda with 22 other items on it. I think our problem was in the past that we got it and it was just a number, but now we know exactly what they are, what the priorities are, and I think that's great. I applaud you for doing that. After all, I brought the motion to do it that way. But I think we need to know capital budget in the context of the overall budget. I think that's what the public expects us to do. Not just say, well, yeah, capital budget, bang, it's gone. It's in the context. Capital is part of the overall budget. So that's the reason I brought it. If people don't want to pass that, I guess we can go back to asking questions starting at 1 and working through 66 or whatever the number is.
Okay, the clerk has come up with something to add to the discussion.
We have had a meeting of the minds, and so my explanation was how we've always previously done it. So if council is wanting to receive this and deal with it all in budget, then our recommendation is that you do deal with it all. You determine the projects and everything in budget. So if that's the motion that's there, similar to I think what I just heard Councillor Salmon saying is you pick on, you talk about an FTE and you talk about all of this. So if you want to break that into the budget process, then you're welcome to do that.
Any other final comments before we put this motion to vote? Seeing none, we'll vote on this.
All votes are in. Motion passes 12-6.
Item 17B, Public Works Downtown Service Level Standardization.
Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendations.
We have a seconder. Councillor Crew. Questions? Councillor Harrigan.
Oh. Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just wanted to comment that I'm very happy to move the report and wanted to thank Ryan and also Paul and some of the work that the Downtown BIA had done in providing information about what it is that we're doing for downtowns. As I've said before, that the goal of the motion is really to be more transparent in how we can support our downtowns in getting things done. So the next generation of volunteers may or may not know who our road supervisors are or may not be able to meet with them in a coffee shop just ad hoc. What's needed is a process for people who are new volunteers or new BIA members within our communities to reach out and to understand what it is that Public Works is providing for them in terms of beautification. Ryan, there were some concerns addressed to council in the form of some of the events that are taking place annually, specifically in the larger downtowns around parades and the support of Public Works and providing barricades. Are barricades included within the scope of this agreement, or is that something else entirely?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the specific topic of barricades is not part of the scope of this report. The scope of this report is just public works support regarding, say, the street lights in those core downtown areas where we're putting up Christmas lights and banners and things like that. And also this kind of got into garbage cans and putting up benches in the spring, but in general, barricades is another separate thing Public Works does, as well as other departments are involved in different beautification, watering flowers, et cetera.
And in terms of, like, let's say Tilbury wants to do a new parade to celebrate somebody's birthday or something unique to their community, how would they go about contacting? Would they use the Beautification Initiative request form, or would they go through other processes, like when they're getting the permit for the parade, and that would kind of trigger that Public Works needs to support in barricades? What would that look like?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We didn't specifically analyze that. However, through this exercise, it's probably a good process as well that we implement this, because at the end of the day, the barricade budget isn't unlimited either. Now, obviously, some of those things are not so significant. We can go out and put a few barricades out, depending on the size of the parade. But that process does have the special event process that they apply. So those initiatives come to Public Works Administration beforehand. And if it was some massive request for barricades that was outside our current scope, there would be time to discuss that. Whereas currently with this initiative and program, there hasn't been that processing like there is with the special event form. So this is something we're trying to correct.
Right. So just wanted to reiterate my support for this. There's some comments about funds coming out of the Together CK pot of money that we have. And from feedback that I've had through the BIA that I work with out in Wheatley, I feel that that's very appropriate. What's happening is they're applying to this Together CK fund to then turn around and give some money to Public Works to help put up, you know, holiday lights or something like that. So it's really kind of just taking money and then putting it back in. What this, I think, does is streamline and reduces some of the red tape for our community organization so that they know what it is that Public Works can provide for them. And then they also have a very clear process for something new or a unique celebration for Public Works to support. So looking for support, and really pleased, Ryan, with the work that was done for this.
Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Thank you, Councillor Harrigan, for bringing this up, because we needed to streamline some things. Thanks, Ryan, for all the work you've done. You heard Mr. Chattel's concerns that Chatham BIA has 14 events and they'll get support for 4. How will that work or look?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I did, when I received this a little earlier today, I was trying to do a bit of digging, because I completely agree that Chatham has a lot more events than these 4 or 5. However, I believe, once again, the scope of this report, which is just talking about hanging Christmas lights, the number of times that we changed banners in Chatham was not once for every event that happened in Chatham.
That's correct.
So I mean, there is other support that Public Works and other groups are doing for these different events, including barricades, which is a big one for the parades and stuff.
And those would be all included in the special event permit, correct?
Correct.
With the garbage cans.
And one thing I do want to get across, and I'm not sure if it's completely explicit in my report, is that we're not, the intention of this report is to not remove any services from any area that we're currently doing.
Good.
It's that if you notice the table in the report, we have some inconsistent practices that are going on in different communities, and Public Works doesn't have the current budget to provide everything to everybody at this time. So it's not that we're trying to limit some communities. We're trying to bring other communities up so that everybody's kind of getting equal treatment around.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. I notice on the second page of the report, Ryan, that you've listed the 11 communities throughout the municipality, and 4 of those, Chatham, Wallaceburg, Bothwell, and Blenheim, are not listing any private volunteers involved. And I was just wondering, given our focus on civic engagement, I'd really like to see some assurance that, you know, this process in no way will jeopardize the valued role of volunteers, that there will be a working together with Public Works and the volunteer sectors in those communities to make sure that those volunteers feel valued.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you know, I will definitely say the volunteers in the communities do a lot of great things that are above and beyond what Public Works does. However, the one issue that I do want to tackle here is that regarding hanging of the banners and the flower pots, anything that's up high, and sometimes there's streetlight poles with electricity, just that safety concern is something that we take quite seriously, and we would love to have the funds to make sure that none of these community groups have to put any of their volunteers that's in a safety situation hanging a banner on an electrified pole. So that's something that's really important, but in no way is this saying that the private volunteers can't be volunteering with these groups.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much. I'll keep my comments brief. I just wanted to say thank you very much to Councillor Harrigan for bringing this forward and finally getting this accomplished. It's something that I've been having conversations with over the last 6 years, kind of informally, and it took a formal notice of motion to get it done. And I wanted to say thank you to Ryan and his staff. The folks in Erie are very, very happy to see this taken care of, and I'm very happy to see this come forward so that when we have our monthly ERIO meetings, we can stop talking about exactly what Wallaceburg gets and exactly what Dresden gets and how come it's different and how come we can't get our banners up and on and on and on ad nauseum. So really looking forward to supporting this. Glad to see that the work is going to get done. I took it to the community group at the last meeting with Councillors Latimer and Sakachi to present it, and I guess at first glance they were very happy to see a formal process put in place, so thank you.
Councillor Foss?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also like to thank Councillor Harrigan for this report. In my opinion, this is way overdue. I know Dresden's had a lot of cooperation with Board of Works, but sometimes communication doesn't really get presented at a timely fashion, and I think this will clean that up. So I commend you for putting it together, you and your staff, Ryan. One question. Prior to this, were the BIAs charged for any of this service?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From Public Works, no.
Okay.
We have not sent out invoices to Public Works Group. However, as you can see, there have been some communities or some groups that have paid for services from contractors directly, but nothing was ever done by Public Works and then recouped from the group.
Okay, that's good. That clears that up because I did get comments that BIAs were charged for some of that work, but it was something that they initiated and it wasn't through the municipality that these charges were imposed in. Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor. I do support this, and I think it's a great initiative going forward. I just had a few questions. How will groups going forward be notified of this new process? Is it just at this meeting now, or is there going to be a method of reaching out so that groups notice? Because I noticed there's a 60-day notice that they have to provide, but if they don't know until they're in the midst of their event, they may miss a 60-day window. So that concerned me a little bit, so I'd like to know that. And the other thing was, the only other part that really concerned me a little bit was this additional form. We've been going around with the mayor, and we've gone to numerous groups and community groups planning events and different things, and we're really been working, at least I know in our ward with the mayor, on this one-stop shopping to make it easier for people to access everything, and this kind of looks to me like another layer. Will this go to whoever's processing events to go in with the original documents, or do they have to come to PUC separately to make these request forms? So it was just more concern on how our communities access this properly and with proper notification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to answer the first question, which is through this exercise, I've got to know quite a few of the community group folks. And part of this, to be honest, is a little bit of the challenge that we've had is that some community groups, the BIA, we have great contact information for, but some of the other maybe smaller groups in the outlying areas, we didn't have great contact information for. So that's part of the exercise, and we'll definitely reach out to them and push this out to them so that they understand the new process. And to answer the second question regarding, I guess, the burden of another new form, that's something through writing this, Thomas and I did discuss if there's a possibility to include this in the special event permitting process and make that kind of one package. And I'm definitely not opposed to that. At first glance, I would have said that the special event process doesn't, there's not very many things that if someone's requesting streetlights, it really only affects Public Works. So it's kind of like a direct way to get it to me. But if it goes through the special event process, it would get distributed to the departments that are affected, which would only be Public Works in most cases. So there is an opportunity there. And if there's some efficiency we can find in that, then we can definitely make those changes.
Thank you. And like two groups that come to mind, and of course I'll relate to my community, where WAMBO is a special event organized, and they would go through the municipality for many different permits and different things. So they would already be in that event process, probably privy to that knowledge. But then when you turn around and somebody like the Legion, who it's not really a special event, but an annual recognition of our vets, they might not in the same token. So I would hope that that when you're going through this process, and you go over your list of the regular people that you have been doing this to, that they get notice of this new direction that needs to take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the one thing that's also in the report is that a lot of these events and these community groups, things don't change on a year-to-year basis. And I'm not requesting a new form be done every year for every single event. It's just if a scope is going to change, so, I want to double the number of Christmas lights we're going to put in town, or there's a brand new event that we've never had before. If it's just an ongoing event with, no changes to it, all I'm requesting is that the community group and the road supervisor for the area have a phone call even to just discuss the event, so we kind of address some of these communication gaps we've been having.
Okay, Councillor McGrail, followed by Councillor Latimer and Councillor Oche.
I'm good. My questions have been answered.
Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just further logistics, Ryan. I'm just wondering what the anticipated turnaround time is and how the groups would be informed of how to inform you about their new contact information, and who's going to set up the annual meeting. So the community groups with the road supervisors, whose responsibility is it? So you may not have all those answers tonight, but I'm hoping that while when you're informing the groups of this new process, that those specifics would be involved in that and spelled out, just for our clarification and for theirs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, one thing I will add is that we did put right in this report the contact information for Public Works Administration, so that and we encourage, if groups do have a transfer of management in a community group, that this information gets passed on. And because if there's a new committee member and that's not pushed to us, it's hard to get us this report to them.
Exactly. I can see them giving it to you when they're putting the request in, but 6 months to a year to 2 years later, when things change hands, no one's going to take the responsibility. The new ones aren't going to know enough to, and the previous one may just not think to. Right. So I'm just wondering how are we going to know that we are keeping that information fresh and up to date? So just knowing with a lot of the counselors are involved with those community groups. I'm just wondering if you're going to be using us to maybe keep those contacts updated. That might be a way to do it. I don't know. I don't want to make it any more onerous than it already is for you, and I don't want to increase the red tape either, because this new form, it is, as you say, you don't want to see it viewed as that, but it is one more piece of documentation they have to be filling out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do know. Additionally, like when I was drafting this report and reaching out to community groups, I reached out to Economic Development, who did have a start for a contact list, and I'm not going to say that every single community group was on there, but it was a start, and so that's another way that these groups are also involved with different areas of the municipality, not just Public Works.
Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ryan. Ryan, actually, I got a couple questions, but the one I'm not going to ask you, I'll ask you after, because it strays off the topic a little bit with garbage cans. But lights downtown Tilbury, Christmas lights. So we have talked to Public Works about putting them up. And we were adding lights just into the library park that the BIA donated and were refused to have them put up. So when you say that the BIA's never charged for them, we are being charged for them because we used the people that the Public Works used to put up the lights in the downtown Tilbury. So now we are being charged for it. So I don't know if I should send you something if you'd like, or like, should that not be covered with the other ornaments, Christmas lights that you just put up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, and maybe I wasn't quite clear in my answer to Councillor Foss, was that Public Works has never invoiced a community group directly. Have there been times when we've said no to a community group for an additional scope and they've paid a contractor directly? Yes, that has happened in the past, for example, in Tilbury. But part of this report and what we're saying is 60 days before the event, if this form was filled out and brought to me and Public Works Administration to review, these are the things that we're looking at, is trying to address the scope of these events. And so if it's only the Tilbury Road Supervisor who's looking at Tilbury and saying, well, they normally do 10 Christmas lights and now they're asking to put up 15, when Public Works Administration, who looks after all the different communities, go, well, you know, actually we do 15 in every other community, we probably should be doing 15 in Tilbury as well, trying to keep that equal service, but also keeping in mind that if we double the level of service in Tilbury, we have to be mindful that, well, to be fair, we got to be doubling the level of service everywhere else. So what we're really asking for in this process is so that Public Works Administration can holistically look at the scope that everybody's performing. So to answer the direct question about certain Tilbury lights, we can definitely talk about that after and review that. But the intention of the process is that, yes, sometimes we will have to say no unless I come back and ask for more budget.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to add a couple things. We did tour a lot of community groups, and we heard this quite a few times. So this resolves a lot of issues we get across the community. I really like the idea of the simplicity of it, the safety of it, the consistency. I would suggest that maybe rather than asking them to reach out to us, maybe once a year we spend a day or two going through. We know there's going to be Christmas. We know there's going to be Remembrance Day. Go through those dates and contact all the people that have done that and saying, you're doing the same thing. So it'll allow you once a year to be able to schedule everything. I mean, that would probably avoid a lot of the flipping over if someone else does come to the table and they don't know they have to file. I inevitably see that being an issue, but if we reach out in advance of that. But I love what we're doing here, and certainly will support it. Seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 17C, Stevenson Road and Goodrow Line intersection traffic control modifications.
Councillor Harrigan.
I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor OJ.
I'll second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 17D, Railway Crossing Reserve Transfer, Carl Drive, City of Chatham.
Councillor B. McGregor.
I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor Crew. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 17E, motion by Councillor Wright regarding crosswalk in Ridgetown.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Whereas Chatham-Kent takes the safety of the children seriously, and whereas Nye Ridge School is located in a high-traffic area with Tim Hortons across the road, it is resolved the administration moved to install a pedestrian activity crosswalk in front of the school similar to the crosswalk in front of the Dresden School.
Councillor Pinsino.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. begin with, the school kids today presented me with their reason we should have a crosswalk. And you should take time and read this. And the students done a good job, but they ask that you recycle this property when you're done with it, because that's today's kids. The other thing I have to add, the school is a high traffic area with Tim Hortons and the arena and the driveways into the University of Guelph with their heavy equipment going in there. At this time now, teachers are going out in the center of the road to stop the traffic when the buses are there to try to get the kids across. The teachers are actually doing the crossing guard job. It's going to be dangerous because they're not out there in high-vis outfits or anything. The parents, a lot of days, park at the arena across the road, then the children have to walk across to the arena, or they go to Tim Hortons. The parking lot at the school also used after hours. When the arena parking lot is full, for their hockey games and that, they come across the highway there. It is a busy place, and there's more buses now because of the Ridgetown Public School being closed, and the extra buses are there now. But it's actually a high collision zone too. I'm up there quite a few times in a year, and it's always at school time when the buses are coming or going, and there's collisions there. So consider it. Thank you.
Councillor Pinsino.
Thank you, Worship. I honestly can't believe Ridgetown wasn't recommended for an automatic crossing at the time when they removed the guards. At the time, Councillor Brown and I argued that this is a busy place there, and to no avail. I don't know when the traffic study was done at the time, but I'm thinking it must have been done in the summer, because when you have the school in and the arena traffic there, it's unbelievable how much traffic is there. That Tim Hortons there is one of the busier ones in rural Chatham-Kent. You get traffic off the 401. There's signs out there, and people got to have their Timmies. In they come. This is a serious safety concern. It honestly is, and it needs to be addressed. Councillor Brown and I, several years ago, got the speed limit reduced to 50 before it went to 40, recognizing that this is a dangerous spot. I just ask that you support this, and we need to move forward. This actually should have been done when the guards were pulled out, and I'd like to see it move forward. Thank you.
Seeing no other, Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. Typically, we would do a study. We did that study in 2016, and it wasn't warranted. I'm not saying that things haven't changed now, and normally we would do a study. The second thing is that if the study came back and it was warranted, we would then put that in our capital plan. We estimate that this could cost around $60,000. Right now, it is not in the capital plan that we just discussed. And as well, there's 2 other crosswalks on the capital plan that are deferred right now. So I just wanted to make council aware of all the dynamics of what's happening with this. So.
Councillor Wright, any last words?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Thomas and me talked earlier today. The crosswalks that he's talking about has been deferred for a couple of years. How long is it going to take to get a crosswalk? Like, if we go the route that we're supposed to here, but by having a study and doing everything else, this is getting deferred too long. Thank you.
Councillor Oche, any?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Thomas. Thomas, the 2 that are deferred, what's the reason? I mean, other than we don't have the money, obviously, but where are they at?
They're both in Chatham. One is on Grand River Line. Councillor Herman put that forward quite some time ago. It's near the senior center there to cross the road. And it's just a case where it hasn't been warranted yet. The other case is one that we've been asked to move a current crosswalk by the board, and we've asked for their contribution, which they haven't provided to date. So we're certainly happy to move forward with this. I think it's important that council identify the funding source, though. And again, typically, we take this out of our capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Crew?
Thank you. In the spirit of the budget coming up, I would, and I'm not opposed to it, but I would like to know what we're spending and refer this to the budget this week. And it's not that I'm opposed, because safety is a priority, but we need to know where it's coming from, what it's going to cost, and it's only a couple days, so thank you. Refer, defer, what's the right word? Defer? Yeah.
All right, Councillor Crew, we need a seconder for what you're suggesting there, Councillor Hall. And so any other questions about this? The motion referred to the 2020 budget deliberations. Any questions on that? Councillor Pinsino.
Thank you, Worship. It's $60,000, folks.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put this motion to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 11-7.
Item 17F, Civic Center renovations, outstanding council questions. Your Worship, this report was referred back to staff for additional information for the people not only in the chambers but also listening at home. Let me assure you, we're not trying to do anything in terms of trying to spend money here if we don't have to. There was a request to have this report come forward to explore the scope of many different options and trying to come up with the most cost-effective one to support infrastructure requirements. What the administration is requesting is for council to consider the report's recommendations, and if council chooses not to accept any of the recommendations at this time, we would ask that you receive it as an information report with the understanding that we would move ahead in the short term with essential life cycle requirements as required. And Mr. Kelly or Mr. Quinton could both speak to why we're making the reports we can, but it's really trying to be the most cost-effective solution possible. With that, Your Worship, happy to receive comments or direction from council.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendations.
Sorry, which one? There's four of them. You're choosing 1A, B, C, or D.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. I move recommendation 1A.
We have a seconder for 1A, Councillor Latimer. Discussion, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I don't support this. It would be a big surprise, I guess, but I support option E, which didn't seem to even make the screen this evening, which is to fix things as necessary. And the purpose or the reason that I don't support this, $18 million, I really feel that, from a taxpayer's point of view, there's many places to put $18 million, like our roads, for instance, which could use an awful lot of repair. An $18 million retrofit to the Civic Center I don't think is fair, because I don't think even 1% of the population actually comes into the Civic Center. And it's $18 million. I read the report, and I also work in a 40-plus-year-old building. It's not perfect. It's drafty. The windows are leaky from time to time. Does my morale go down a little bit working there? Yes, but, I'm lucky to be working. So this building's fine. I've walked through it many times. I've been around here for a long time. Is it perfect? No, it's not. But it's certainly adequate. It's a nice office building. I certainly don't feel that it needs an $18 million fix. I understand the furnace, the HVAC system, failed 65 times last year. Now, if that's the case, I'd like to be your serviceman, because if you call the service guy 65 times in 1 year, something is wrong. If a furnace fails 65 times in 1 year, wouldn't you just replace the furnace? By replacing the furnace, we seem to be going down this rabbit hole of, well, now we have to gut the entire building and redo everything. And we don't. We don't have to come to code. That's not reality. If you were building a new building, you would have to come to code. But existing buildings, clearly, do not have to be brought to code unless there is some major renovation. Similarly, my home, which was built 180 years ago, nothing's to code. And if I was to build a home today, well, it would have to be. So that's not really an issue. A couple other points. We just sold a railway to great celebration, $5 million. Now we're talking about an $18 million retrofit to what I feel is a very adequate building. $18 million. It'll turn to 20, of course, because everything is over budget, typically. So, $18 million of tax money, is it really needed? Is this the right place for it, or is a $60,000 crosswalk? We're talking about $18 million for a building that really we have to face the taxpayer, and when they come to us and say, my roads are inadequate, bridges, pools, parks, core business, and we say, oh, you know, that's too bad because we just built the Taj Mahal for staff, and again, maybe the 1% that come in here. So I am very much opposed to this. I think we can get along like every other building owner and fix things as they break. We don't have to entirely gut this building because the furnace doesn't work. People do that. They fix things when necessary, sometimes not even on time. If it's a little drafty, it's a little drafty. It's not perfect, but again, it's a workplace. It's not the Hilton. So I would support option E, which I can't because it's not on the screen. So I won't be supporting this, and those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Thomas, or Chris, Thomas? Sorry, Thomas. Does this include moving to another location and moving back? Does it also include any work we'd have to do at that other building? I'm sure we're going to have to do some work there to run everything that we run in this building now.
Thank you, Mayor. So if you choose option A or B, we have set aside close to $1 million, $800,000 for two moves, one to move out, one to move back. We're looking at the PABC office space to do that. So that's our budget. That's our estimate to do exactly what you say.
Which is in here?
It's included, yes, in the 18 million. In A.
Any work we have to do in the building that we would go to?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Finn?
I have to agree with Councillor Bondi. I worked in a building, 28 years old now. The HVAC failed many times. You work in very hot weather in full uniform. You wear a coat at nighttime because the front desk is freezing. There's security issues. I can't support $18 million to renovate this.
Councillor Latimer?
Thank you, through the mayor. I just want to clarify something. I'm looking at it as not financially prudent to defer this issue any further, simply because the costs aren't going to go down. They're in fact only going to go up, and they will go up substantially, almost 2 to 3 times that 18.1 million estimate if we have a major fail, and we have to put in place emergency contingency plans, and that would involve moving staff, moving public, all those issues. Correct, Thomas?
Thank you, Mayor. That's absolutely correct. In the report, page 4, we talk about the cost to do nothing, and we estimate between an incremental $9 to $18 million. So we came forward with this report in 2017. The cost then was $14 million. Now it's $18 million. The cost does keep going up, and it's a cost that we're eventually going to have to pay. We're going to eventually have to replace that HVAC system. And what we're experiencing now, and I showed some pictures, is that we're now seeing corrosion of the plumbing of the HVAC system as well. So that's where you're seeing the dripping coming down. This is just a matter of time before it fails, and when it fails, without the right planning, we're actually going to spend a lot more money than what we're proposing here.
I also want to clarify, when we do have to, let's say we have to, we wait till the major fail. When that happens, because of the work that has to be done, we will have to upgrade to the AODA standards because of the type of work that involves, and that involves taking ceilings and walls down. Correct, Thomas? So where Councillor Bondi is saying that we don't have to meet code, we will have to meet code if we have to do the extent of renovation and modulation. That's expected. That was something that we clarified last time, I believe, when we talked about this. And I checked with AODA about that, Councillor Bondi, and we do. If it was a minor renovation, and I think our building manager, or CEO, commented on that as well. He said for a minor renovations, ordinary, day-to-day, it would be fine. But because of the extent of the changes that would have to occur, that we would be expected to meet the AODA new standards for accessibility. I do have a concern too with the current public and employee accessibility and safety issues and us being on this second floor. So I think it merits consideration, and it's only going to cost us more money. It's not your own home. Think about how you manage your own home and maintenance. Do you wait till a major fails, or do you plan? Most of us who are prudent do plan, and it costs money to maintain things.
Councillor B. McGregor, followed by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Do we have any estimation of what a 10-year or 15-year cost would be if we did nothing? So I know we're talking about a couple different options, and that, you know, it's politically easy to say doing nothing is free, and it's also easy to say it's expensive to do nothing. We can make that argument, but do we have an idea of real cost, of saying if we have a failure and it's in 5 years, we have this expectation it's going to be blank X million dollars. So do we have a ballpark figure of what that expense could be over the next 10 years?
So thank you, Mayor. It's a great question. It's my best estimate would be it could be $18 million. At a minimum, we're looking at approximately a $5 million repair just for the basic HVAC system. We also, at the same time, again, we cannot put in this system without replumbing, without putting in additional vents. I showed on figure 3, it's a radiator system we have as part of the solution now. That is all going to disappear. That's old technology that's going to disappear, so we'll have to add venting. A lot of our vents are leaking now. They're very loud as well, and they're just not going to fit the new system. So everything has to be redone sequentially and moving people in and out. So that number could be exactly 18 million. It could be worse. Again, right now, what we're doing to hold the fort together is we're spending money at a 50 to 100% premium now just to keep the system going. So we're throwing really good money after a bad solution. And in the end, eventually, we're going to have to replace the system. It's a 43-year-old system. How many of us have a 43-year-old HVAC system at home? You know, that we have really got our money out of that. We've done very well, but the time has come now to move on, and our recommendations are really to save money for the municipality. This is, you know, you can look at this as a $9 to $18 million savings proposal as opposed to an $18 million cost.
Yeah. And I think that's the struggle. It's politically really easy to say, I just don't want to spend this money, and no one's going to win any fans by voting yes on a proposal like this. We all know that. But I also think that when we look at past decisions and how those sometimes cost us money, we can think about decisions around Thames Campus Arena or around Dresden Arena or some of these other pieces of infrastructure that weren't maintained over time. They end up costing us more. And when we delay in replacement, it costs us more. You don't have to look further than the animal shelter to see that. So I think that as easy it is tonight to say, I don't want to do this, it's a political hot potato, I don't want to touch it, I'm going to be unpopular in the media. If we think about 10, 15, 20 years from now and the people that will have to sit around here and deal with that decision we make, it's not hard to know what the right decision is. It's picking the cheapest long-term decision, and that's fixing it before it breaks, frankly. So it won't be popular, but it's the right thing to do.
Mr. Quinn, did you want to add something to that?
Just to clarify one of the things Thomas was saying there, option E is to spend 27 to 36 million, not just 18.1. It's the 18 million on top of the 18 million that you were going to spend, because it's going to cost 1.5 to 2 times more to do these emergency repairs when they happen. So options C, D, and E require a tax increase that you should be considering in the next couple weeks. Options A and B can be done under the existing life cycle plan that's in place. A life cycle plan that is there for when the bridge fails, we have money aside to build the new bridge. In this case, we have money set aside to rebuild the Civic Center to last for the next 40 years. Within the existing life cycle approved plan, without asking for more money in the asset management plan approved. That's where on page 10, I showed the graph and financial information that our plan is to let our life cycle reserve go into a negative of $8 or $9 million over the next 3 years as the rebuild happens, so that in 2026 we'll come out of that back to positive, and we'll have the funds available to fix other buildings in Chatham-Kent. Without approving either A or B tonight, it is basically saying you're creating a $9 to $18 million additional shortfall that will either have to be made up with new taxation starting next week, or divesting of other buildings, or letting the quality of all our municipal buildings decrease to a much poorer level than they are now. And by the way, in Matt's presentation of our assets values, part of the BMA study, it showed that our assets overall are a lot older than municipalities on average, with the average life already 50 years compared to the 42 average. So all our buildings are getting old, including, and all our other assets as well. We just can't let everything go to the end where they become just astronomically expensive to do spot repairs because you're always out fixing it. Fixing an HVAC system 65 times in a year made that contractor a lot of money this year. They might as well build an office here because they're here so often. It's just getting worse year after year after year. So I just wanted to make sure council knows that C, D, and E require additional taxation or reductions in levels of service, where A and B can be done under the existing life cycle plan.
Mayor Caniff, can I point of order, please? I'll read option E, okay? Because this is what I read. It's right here. Option E is take no action to make Civic Center repairs on an emergency basis. In other words, when it's broken, fix it. That's option E, not what you just said, Court. So it's right there. So just to be clear.
Just to be clear, on page 4, it's taking no action will cost 50 to 100% more.
Right, but we're talking about the recommendation.
Than recommendation A that we're recommending.
Sorry, we're dealing with
with
A right now, discussing that, and okay. All right, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions and a couple of comments. I guess first off, and along the lines of what Councillor Bondi was trying to ask, I don't understand how we can say we have the money to do it, but then we have a graph here that shows us going into the red for 5 years. Can you explain to me how we have the money to do it and yet at the same time do not have the money to do it? It's an accounting thing that I don't understand.
So life cycle reserves are budgeted based on average years. So on average, we spend about $4 million a year on building repairs. For example, in Ridgetown Library right now, we're doing some renovations. That all comes out of that $4 million in our annual budget. This project is needing $18.1 million all at once, or let's say over a 2-year period.
Sure.
So for 2 years, we're going to have to spend $9 million a year, or $18 million over those 2 years, which is going to cause that reserve to be in a deficit. But then we have a fixed building that's been renewed from top to bottom. We'll have and won't need repairs. This building for the next 10 years shouldn't need anything. So we can focus on the other buildings in Chatham-Kent and and only spend, and still spend a couple million on other buildings every year, but gain a couple million back until we are back to positive ground out of that $4 million life cycle budget.
Right, but our building life cycle isn't 100% funded anyway.
No, it isn't. It's around 70% funded. That's why our buildings overall are in bad shape, not just this building. Many buildings are in pretty bad shape because we're not 100% funded in our life cycle plan.
So are we saying that we're sitting in the worst building in Chatham-Kent?
I'm sure there are worse buildings. The value of this building and what it needs to come up it is what the most expensive need there is in the next 10 years.
The most expensive need, but not maybe the most required need. Okay. The 1.5 to 2 times more over, how long of a timeline is that? When you say to do the emergency repairs, and let's be honest, we don't really know what the emergency repairs are. That's why they're emergency repairs. They could literally be nothing. Or potentially, when we do this, we could have an emergency repair somewhere else. But that aside, how long are you estimating that 1.5 to 2 year times, 2 times the cost? Over what timeline?
Thank you, Mayor. So that figure comes from what we're experiencing right now. So all of those times we have to call in a contractor to fix something, typically it's 50 to 100% more because it's done on weekends, it's done in overtime, after hours, and it's always a rush job, so we're getting charged premiums as well. So that was the question that council posed. What would it cost to do it on an emergency basis? That's what we're seeing right now.
Right. So, but Gord said that option E would cost us double, potentially. Over what sort of timeline would it cost us double?
I would say over the next 10 years. So maybe less. It all depends.
Perhaps. We'll say 10 years. So that at that point, there was also a comment by Gord that would require taxation increases, but doing quick math, that would put it to me as there would be, it's a net zero. I mean, it's going to cost more, but you're amortizing it over 10 years, right?
So not only is it going to cost 1.5 to double times, the rate of inflation on construction items is rising much greater than the rate of inflation that we're applying to our life cycle budget. So if recently it's been 5 to 10% increases a year, that's why this report in 2017 was 14 million. Now it's 18 million already, just 2.5 years later. I would argue the opposite, that the rise in prices is going to vastly outpace our inflation that we put into our life cycles, and so that's what, so that being 2 times, the 1.5 to 2 times is in today's dollars. It could even be worse. It could be up to 3 times more, just because in year 9 and 10, the price of something might have tripled.
But it might not be. So I can appreciate that. Since Thomas asked, and I don't mean to humble brag, but the HVAC in my house is 105 years old. And if you ever want to come over and see it, because much like Councillor Bondi, I have a classic house. And it percolates along, and it's not the most energy efficient thing, but it continues to run for me. I do want to spend this money, actually. I really do, but we all approved that fancy arena. We all kind of put our eggs in that basket. So politically, that's kind of the decision we made, I would think, that the taxpayer and the residents can't shoulder 2 legacy projects in one term. I think that's the decision we made as council. Now, perhaps the money doesn't come from the feds and the province for the arena, then perhaps we could have this conversation again, maybe. But I can't support 2 massive projects like that. As much financial sense, I think, as it probably does make. I hate to tie it back to our homes again, but that's what people understand. We've decided to do one thing in the next 4 years. That's what we've budgeted for. That's what we've allowed for. And that's what we're going to have to support. Our life cycle budget can't handle it, a repair here. I don't want to get into the AODA and what stands for a massive renovation or not, because I'm not that savvy on the building codes. The conversations I've had, the people I've spoken to have said that a simple HVAC, and I'm not saying it's a simple fix, but an HVAC wouldn't trigger that. But again, I'm not a lawyer and I don't know the building code that well. That is something that we would have to turn to our experts and either agree or disagree with them. Anyway, I'm rambling. It's already 8:53, and I can't support it. I agree with Councillor Bondi.
Councillor Pinsino.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Thompson kind of stole my thunder. At our last meeting, we did remove $18.5 million from our reserves to build a fund up for the arena fund. For accessibility reasons, it does make sense to have this down on the ground floor, but we are a small population community with a large geographic area and a ton of infrastructure that's aging. And we can't afford this, honestly, right now. We have a tough year coming. The province has downloaded a lot of expense onto us, and we have to be careful where we're spending our money. I just don't see this as an affordable option.
Councillor C. McGregor, followed by Councillor Crew.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I can't support it as it stands either. And it's, again, just, you know, even if we have the money sitting there, we still haven't had our budget presentation. We have no clue where we're going in this next year. And I personally know we have a lot of downloads coming, as do many of us around this table. So, you know, I would have rather have seen this report maybe come to us in February after the budget process and not right prior to us even having the budget presentation. So just on that factor alone, it's not that I don't support that we need the renovations, and I believe that we probably do. But, no, I don't think the timing's right at this point.
Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I was at a meeting at Public Health last week, and the elevator broke. And my colleague and I walked up the stairs, and there's another person on our committee who has mobility issues. And then we realized that she wasn't there. She probably couldn't get in. She couldn't get up. She couldn't buzz anybody. She couldn't get in. And then we said, well, how would she get out if there was an emergency? I think, and correct me, is there one elevator here? And there was a fellow up here tonight in a very large electric wheelchair. That would be pretty heavy to carry down the stairs in an emergency, but I'm sure our new fire chief and our ambulance manager would make sure they got out. However, we are supporting an age-friendly community. We have accessibility issues. We have people who really want to be at our meetings, or they wouldn't try to get up here and risk not getting out in the one elevator that we have that does break down. And at that age-friendly meeting, Gabriel, the planner, Clark, was there, and he spoke about our HVAC system and other things in the other communities. And no one's mentioned it tonight, but we declared a climate emergency. And part of that is us walking, talking, you know, doing what we say we're going to do. But when he said that, you know, I was just kind of taken back. I never thought about it as being part of an energy and environmentally friendly community, being efficient, using our climate and our energy sources and resources effectively, and safety as well. Councillor Latimer spoke about that, but I've always thought about that. You know, when we're up here, it's pretty tight quarters. We're locked in. You know, I tend to think the risk management sometimes, and it worries me. And I worry about the dollars that we're going to have to spend if it really breaks down with a major crash. So I am going to support it. It's not that I want to spend the money. Who wants to spend the money? I have a 130-year-old house, and boy, when it breaks down, it costs me a lot of money. So putting in that brand new furnace and air conditioner costs me a lot more than it would if I built a new house and plunked in something nice. So I will support this motion. I think that we need to put our money where our mouth is. If we're going to be energy efficient, age-friendly, support accessibility in our community, we need to put our or at least our governance office downstairs, and make those improvements when we can. So I'm done talking about that, but that's some of the reasons, and I think maybe we could hear from Gabriel sometime about making the building energy efficient as well.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I know a partial answer to my question, but can you give us an indication of how many employees are located here as opposed to the former county building and the Park Ave Business Center? And is there any possibility of moving some of those folks here if we did a renovation?
Thank you, Mayor. So we have 200 employees here. We have, for your information, about 50,000 visitors every year from the public that come to this building. We do have opportunities with a complete renovation to bring additional employees from PABC. We looked at that in the past. I would say about another 35 employees could come here through efficiencies as well. And those are all possibilities. I also wanted to note that when we talk about the costs, and we do have a section on the environmental considerations, we're estimating a 30% savings year over year because of this new system that we're going to put in. You see a figure of 13.1 beside the 18.1, which is the net figure. That what we're looking at is all of the future saves year over year, and then bringing that forward in today's dollars. So that's worth $5 million to us, and that's some work that Gord's team did. But that's also, not only do you get the environmental benefits, you get the financial benefits as well of upgrading this building to be energy efficient and to be environmentally friendly.
Thomas, you didn't mention county building. How many staff would we have there?
Well, thank you. When you talk about the county building, we have April's group there, and they're about 190 people, just about the same number. Then we have the rest of the area rented to the province of Ontario, which is a rental that we can't really touch at this time. It's good out till the 2050 range.
So there'd be no ability to move any of those staff here in a renovation?
Well, there's opportunities through design to improve our capacity here by about 35 people, which we would most likely look at PABC first, and April's group would be second. But I don't see the need to move her team to this location, and certainly we could not encompass 190 people. So I'm sure April would prefer her whole team stay, or the majority of her team stay in one position.
Is the 35 the total number that are at the Park Ave Center, or is that a portion?
At the Park Ave Center, we have about 35 office employees. We also have my public works staff. We have some Parks and Rec staff. We have our fleet group there as well. I wasn't considering them, just the office staff.
Okay, I'm just going through the people that have not spoke yet. I know there's a few people that would like to speak again, but I'm getting to the people that have not had a chance, and we're pretty much had everybody speak. But Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Wright, followed by Councillor Hall.
Thank you, through the mayor. I always find myself surprised when I change my mind in council around how I'm going to vote for something, because I initially came in and thought that this was just not something that we could stomach as a council. And then really thinking through and leveraging the analogy of old home, also in an old home on a floodplain, which complicates things a little bit more. I can appreciate how much the only react when there's an emergency not only leaves us a bit unprepared, because if we're not spending our life cycle reserve balance on this building, then we're likely spending it on other buildings year over year. So it puts us in that position of not being as prepared, but it also gives us less control over planning. And I think that this is a bit poorly timed in that we did just approve the arena. Now we're talking about the Civic Center. Tomorrow we're talking about this little thing called growth, which is likely also an ask in the millions in order to facilitate moving forward. But I don't think that those reasons are necessarily good enough reasons to shy away from the decision that we're going to make tonight. My questions were around the reference to divestment on April the 26th, and Thomas, you did answer some of Councillor Kirkwood-White's questions around that. But in April, the report hinted at actually being able to divest other buildings. Is that something that we would only discover over time in terms of the efficiencies and the space efficiencies?
Thank you, Mayor. So 2 years ago, I looked extensively at the opportunities with PABC, that 35 people, and with that, we didn't think we could get rid of the building, but we could lease out the office, potentially, again, through optimized design.
Mm-hmm. And the question I had was also answered about the net cost in terms of the efficiencies we would find in our operating. Would that change our operating budget annually, year over year? If this building is all of a sudden very efficient, will the cost to maintain this building then go down? And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And the experience we have, it's just not the HVAC system, it's all the lighting systems as well. We have some great experience with our street lighting, where we converted them all to LED. We had less than a 4-year payback. So absolutely, you're going to get that payback, and then you're going to have at least 30% less in energy costs.
Right. So then in our budget, like I'll call it our utility bills, right? Like our utility bills go down for something like the Civic Center. Where do those dollars go? Is that something that's brought back as a report to council to say, hey, suddenly our utility bills are 70% of what they used to be. Where do you want this money to go? Or is that something that would then go back into life cycle? Like, how does that work?
So that's been, sorry, to Mayor Caniff, that would be captured in the following year's budget process where there, for Tim's area, for the Civic Center, he would need a 30% reduction in his natural gas and electrical bills.
Right. So I also think some of our challenge as a council is also to hold ourselves accountable to those savings, right? If we're finding that efficiency, then we can, as long as we're not just spending it on something new and we recognize that we've put our big investments in year 2 of our council term, then there's those opportunities to find those future savings so that not only are we not raising taxes by doing this investment, but we're continuing to be able to offer better service with those savings and those efficiencies. Because accessibility is part of the reason for us to redo these renovations, does the province offer any type of additional funding or support?
Thank you, Mayor. So we have a section, that was one of the questions, it was on grants. We researched that, and there are grants available through reduction of GHG emissions. It's through SCM. They offer a low interest rate loan of $5 million up to close to $1 million in grants. Those are always changing, but that's certainly something as well that we would apply for if the decision was made, and those opportunities would exist for us.
Mm-hmm. And then the last time council approved something that was millions and millions of dollars, we were very much, like I look at the arena approval and we talked about like hiring an architect and looking over that process. Would we expect something similar to take place here? I guess some of my unease is that disconnect that I have with renovating a 40-year-old civic center. So what would the process look like moving forward?
So if given approval tonight, our first action would be to put out an RFP for an architect. The architect would fully design the building. From there, we would then send out another RFP for a contractor. And most likely, we would do one floor at a time so that we can still maintain our operations here. And it will be a challenge for us to move everyone around, but that's the process we're looking at. Architect first, followed by the contractor.
So from time to time in council, we have conversations that are centered around, previously decisions were made that, we're just passed on to the next council, and now we have to face those realities financially. I'm thinking a lot about infrastructure, and I really don't want to be that council that pushes something forward. What I think is really important as council is if we consider this, that does not impact our taxes or our tax increase, is that tomorrow we also enter a growth conversation with an open mind. And the timing is unfortunate, but I think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do what's right.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Mr. Kelly, the 65 calls for repairing the furnace, what was the cost of that?
I know it was in excess of $100,000. I'd have to go back and check. That was just 1 year, 65 days we were down. Last year, it was this 2019, it was like 45 days we had issues. I mean, it's ongoing. It's important that council recognize that this is not a home, though. This is a business, and we're trying to run a business. My greatest fear is that we could have this HVAC system go down in the next month, and we would be completely shut down. We would not have operations. We had a case in 2018 where we went 7 days without any heat. On the third floor, it was about 9 degrees. And unlike your home, you may be able to put up with that in your home. We can't. There's laws governing that, and we would have to send employees home. So that's my greatest fear, is the shutdown in operations. It all depends when it's going to happen. If it happens in the summer, certainly we can bring in more fans. But if it happens in the winter, we could talk about a shutdown of operations here.
Is this a rooftop unit? This heat system in here?
Yes, it is. And it's all on the fourth floor. I'm sure nobody's been there.
Has it ever been priced out just to see what the unit would cost, the rooftop unit cost to replace?
Yes, that's part of the proposal. That's what's in the 18 million.
Just to do the heat system, though, if you just done the unit outside.
Just the unit itself is about $2 million. That doesn't include all the installation and the new plumbing and the new venting. And again, feeding 3 different floors.
Is it
all
a hot
of that
air
is on
system?
top of that, all of the contracts. So it's a very much of a comprehensive global solution that you've got to look at. And that's why it's extremely beneficial not to do it piecemeal, to do it with solid planning in place. And we'll save a lot of money by doing that. And I just want to say that this is a cost we can't avoid. It's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be 2 years or 5 years. It's going to happen, though. So
if they just put a new unit on, can they not tie into the existing vending system?
No, we cannot do that because the existing system is so out of date. It's a technology you would never choose to get that 30% savings. I mean, it's what the system we have now is a boiler system using both radiator and also forced air. And all the technology you see in offices today are moving completely away from that. And that's why we want to plan this out and do it properly. We're not replacing an apple with an apple. It's an apple with an orange. But it's an orange which is extremely efficient, much more efficient than what we have today.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall, followed by Councillor Scotchy and Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Very quick, I think Councillor Harrigan maybe asked my question, but I'll just ask it again a little bit differently, I think. So if we approve this tonight, what are the next steps, which I think you got to, but I guess what I'm thinking is, are we, what reports will we see from this? Like, you know what, obviously we're committing, if we support this, an investment of 18.1 million, but what will we see back in terms of, is this, writing that check, but will we have more decisions as a council moving forward, throughout the process in terms of where the money is allotted and for what?
Thank you, Mayor. So the next report, if you approve this, the next report you will see is the results of the RFP for the architect. And following approval of that, the next report you would see is the RFP for the contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you. Through your worship, I guess I'm having a really hard time with this for the aspect of actually I wasn't going to speak because I'm not going to learn anything by speaking. I was trying to hear everybody out. But one thing that I did want to touch base on is that I can't support it just because of the timing. But I'm going to kind of speak a little bit against my points. In talking about growth shortly, I was doing some research in the last several weeks, and I just wanted to see if Gord, if you could just help me out with something quickly. So I do know the faster the economy is growing, unfortunately, that rises the inflation costs of construction a lot more. As they're busy, the cost increases. And I know that it was what a 7% increase, I think, that you've seen in commercial. What would that, let's say the average would be about 3.6%. What would that be compounded in 10 years on that money roughly? Are you able to give me like a rough figure, something like that, if it's compounded?
Well, just roughly, the prices will double over a 10-year period at approximately a 7 or 8% increase. It's going to double the cost, and that's why we're projecting that this is going to cost 1.5 to 2 times more over the next 10 years. And we have the evidence just over the last 3 years. We've gone from $14 million, which, by the way, there was energy grants available through the previous government of the province of Ontario at that time that would help with their lighting and a lot of, there's much more grants available at that point. Sorry to get sidetracked, but right now we're saying that the costs have already risen $4 million over the last 3 years. Every 3 years it's going to rise another $4 million based on.
And lastly, I don't have an accounting background, so can you just clarify really quickly for me the investment of 18.1, then the 13.1 net, just because I kind of get the reference, but I just wanted to see if just for you to clarify.
So what we did is took the current utility bills in this building.
Minus the savings, and that would give you
and then projected what a 30% savings would be over the 40-year life of what this building would be extended to if we had this rebuild.
Yeah,
we're
perfect.
42 years in. We're projecting this will extend it another 40 years.
So basically,
we'll
it's the cost minus the savings.
And then we're just taking the present value of those savings over the 40 years to come up with in today's dollars, $5 million savings.
Now, would this be something that would be basically taking out of the capital out of the reserve at a one-time cost, or would this be something that would be taken out as the project was in completion steps? So it would be something that would be withdrawn like periodically, or would it be just one transfer?
So the plan is much more efficient to do it as one project. It's being estimated to be a 18 to 24 month project, just maybe 24 to 30 months.
If I could comment, so we estimate probably it's going to be a 3 to 4 year project. So the first cost will be, first cash flow will be for the architect. And then we'll have, we usually have a progressive payment to the contractor. So you're looking at 18, or it'll be 13.1 net, 18.1 over 4 year time period.
So if it's a 4 year period, are we then paying today's construction rates, or are we paying, is it going to be tendered in for that's what the rate's going to be over the 4 years, or is each individual step of the project going to be a different, I know it might be the same company, but it's going to be tendered, because then that, as Councillor Bondi was indicating, that 18.1 is now going to be 23 or 20, or that's another concern that I have. If it's in steps and over a 4 year period, are we going to, our end goals going to be 18.1, or is it then going to be 20 or exceeding that?
Yeah, so what we have done already in the 18.1 is that we're assuming we're going to be probably 8 months or more in the architectural phase. Then we'll have the contractor, and he'll start working over the next 2 to 3 years. We have already assumed an inflation factor to get that to that point of the 18.1. Okay, once that's awarded to him, though, or her, that is a commitment. So that'll be the maximum amount that we'll have to pay. But we've already factored in 2 years of a rate of 3.5%. What we're seeing in the market right now is actually 5%.
5%, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarifications. Thank you, through Your Worship.
Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Worship. To Mr. Kelly, we've had a lot of discussion. I just want to make sure I understood one of the answers. I think my friend Mr. Wright asked you a question of what the replacement just of the HVAC system was. And you said $2 million?
Thank you. Yeah, that's just the cost to replace the HVAC system.
Right, that's what I wanted to know.
It doesn't include the labor to install it or anything like that.
Okay. So, this has come before us. I think we got to look at the big picture here. This has come before us in May of, let's see now, I'll get the right date here, January of 2017, 3 years ago, almost to the day. And what was the answer at that time? Was that the no, don't do anything?
Yeah, at that time we proposed 14.1 million, really the very similar solution.
Right.
And it was declined by council.
So council's decision 3 years ago was no. Then it came back for some reason on May 13th, and I happen to have council's resolution here, and I'm not sure why it came back, but it did. And the answer at that time was moved by Councillor Cruz, second by Councillor Foss. The report be referred back to administration for an architectural assessment to answer the following questions. and it's reviewing a security company, retrofitting the elevator, refit the washroom, moving council chambers to a different building, options to make the council chambers more accessible, cost difference between planned replacement and emergency replacement of the HVAC system, cost of moving staff if the HVAC system failed, grant funding available, and any other issues to be referred to. But none of those things are broken out here very well. I mean, if the reason it's back here now is as a result of the May 13th, 2019 meeting, I don't see the answers to these things. I see us back to January 16, 2017, saying, no, we got to do it all, the same as we were told in 2017. So I'm not sure why we're here. I mean, if the answer is you need a new HVAC system, I fully understand that. That makes sense. But council's already said no to at least the last council already said no. And the only reason that you'd be back here now is because of the May 13th, 2019 motion by Councillor Crew and seconded by Councillor Foss. And this doesn't have the answers to that question. That's the only reason you could be back here. So I'm a little surprised at that. But the other issue, and I'm not going to rehash all these things, we had a motion earlier. This is a capital project, right? This is a capital project. And it's my view that we should be dealing with this capital project like we deal with other capital projects in the context of the entire budget. So maybe the answer is, when we look at it in the context of the entire budget, you may say, you know what, Mr. Kelly's right. We should be putting a new HVAC system in. Or you may say, no, shoot the moon, go for the whole thing. Or you may have an answer, because I remember I asked Mike when he was still here, if we don't get the grant answer from the province, well, what's the drop dead date on getting the grant answer from the province, was my question while sitting over there where Aaron is now. And he told me February. So if the answer is you're not getting the money from the province for an arena, you need to have that information if you're going to decide, oh, I'm going to spend 18 on something else. So from that perspective, as opposed to, what we should do and what we shouldn't do, it's just my view that we should defer this to the budget like we are doing with other capital projects, so we have in mind exactly what we're facing in 2020. And I don't think it's going to be something good that we're facing in 2020, and we should know that before we make a decision on a one-off on this, particularly when we don't have the answers to the May 13th, 2019 questions. If it really just comes down to the HVAC system, we know the answer to that. It's $2 million plus the installation. But, I think we're moving a little rapidly on something that this council asked for certain questions, and we're back to 2017. You got to do the whole thing. That's the only way to do it. So I move that we defer this entire report to budget, and at that time, perhaps we'll get the answers to the questions that are on the May 13th resolution the council passed.
Hey, seconder for that, Councillor C. McGregor.
Mayor, I don't quite understand the comments. On page 4, we have listed all of the questions, and then on page 5, right out through page 7, we answer all the questions. So I don't know if you're looking at a wrong report, but the report that's dated January 8th, that's exactly what we've done.
Where is the
bottom of page 4?
What is the cost of hiring? Yeah, okay, you're right. You're quite right. Some of these answers are there, but they should all come back to us at the budget, because that's where we should be making the decision on a capital expenditure. So my answer, my motion remains the same.
Councillor C. McGregor has seconded. Do I have any other questions regarding deferring to budget on the motion for that? Councillor Harrigan.
I just have a process question. So, through this report, there are some questions and there are items that we could potentially pick and choose to do. So is that the anticipated conversation at budget?
You're asking through your worship?
Yes.
You're asking, yes. Yes. You can it gives you a menu, and Mr. Kelly's quite right, there are numbers in here. It gives you a menu that you can choose from to say, yeah, I really believe that the HVAC system needs to be replaced, and I know the cost of it, and I'm willing to commit to that. You may say, retrofit the elevator. There happens to be, just as a bit of very quick history, amalgamation came, there were two buildings. There was a county building and there was a city building. The choice had to be, which one are you going to go into? The province went into the other building. It has far more traffic than we do here, and it has single public elevator shaft, same thing, same size. So those are the kinds of information that you may want to take into account in making a decision. So you would have the opportunity in the capital budget discussion to say, yeah, I agree, here's what we should do. I just don't think that not knowing, there are things that we know can be bad, but right now we don't even have enough information to know how bad the budget may be. Maybe Brock does, but nobody else, I don't think anybody else does. I certainly don't. And that's why I made the motion to defer it to budget.
Okay. Councillor Bondi, followed by Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mayor Canada. I'm not going to support deferring this, referring it. I understand the rationale behind it, but this is our third time at this. Frankly, I think we should just vote on it and either give it an up or down. Like, let's either do this or not do this. And to send this to budget, this is $18.1 million. This is going to, it's a gigantic amount of money. And if we try and break it out in budget into maybe do this part of it, that part of it, I think we're going to end up right here again, deciding whether we're going to vote in favor of recommendation number 1 or not. So I think we should just get it over with and vote this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. My suggestion was to see if we could get a estimate on just doing the HVAC for right now too in the quotes that we're having here.
And that's something we could do if deferred to budget. We could work out those pieces as Councillor Solomons pointed out. Any other questions before we put this to vote? Seeing none, we'll vote on this motion. The report be referred to the 2020 budget deliberations.
Motion is 9-9. Motion fails.
All right, we're back to the motion then of 18 or of 1A. Councillor Foss. Now everyone has spoken, with the exception of one person. I'm going to allow Councillor Foss the last words on it, because otherwise we'll be here forever trying to go through it. We're going to run out of time. So I'll go to Councillor Foss, and if Councillor Latimer, who seconded it, has any last comments. Councillor Foss, you're up before we vote.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. All the reasons why we should be doing it has been expressed, so I'm not going to touch on them. I look back when this building was built, probably 40 years ago. It probably wasn't a popular idea at that time either. But look how well that this building has served us for so long. But it's old. It needs some repairs. So let's put the money into it. And as was brought up earlier, it's not the first time we're hearing this. This has been since 2017. Let's bite the bullet. And I know it's not politically popular, but we're not here to win votes for ourselves. We're here to do the right thing, and by supporting this today is doing the right thing. So let's get on with it.
All right, with that, we will put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion fails 7-11.
All right. Item 18, corporate services.
Don't we have to move it for information?
So that we are not in sort of limbo, I would appreciate if council could, thank you for Councillor Thompson, but I would appreciate if council could at least move this for information with the understanding that if there is a repair or a life cycle requirement that is a necessity, that we would be able to do that, but we're not planning on going ahead with an $18 million comprehensive plan. That's,
All right, so can I get a motion to, as for information, Councillor Thompson,
make that
seconded
motion.
by Councillor Latimer. Do we need electronic? Yeah, electronic vote on that.
Councillor Crew. Councillor Crew?
So, Mr. Norton, do we need, are you looking for some clarity?
Are you trying to get some clarity on
Yes, I would, I know we've passed some motions and administration has not been clear on what that just told them. So I think with the meeting there, Mr. Norton, can you confirm that that's what you want to do, is confirm some? So,
and that's what I was trying to get some clarity on, the same reason, John. So one of the recommendations, in hindsight, we shouldn't have had the E on the report as a recommendation, because that basically hog ties us from doing any repairs, right? So that's what I'm trying to avoid. So if you've received the report, and if council can give us direction that we have the, the understanding that we're going to proceed if there is a repair required or a life cycle requirement, but you're giving us direction that we're not proceeding with a comprehensive, $18 million review of the plan.
Mr. Mayor, if I can say so, if we vote down the report or the motion as passed and we just leave it there, then we're as if nothing was passed.
Status
so we're in the
quo.
same place we were 10 minutes before the motion was brought up. So I assume that council still authorizes the CIO to emergency repairs, et cetera,
yes,
et cetera.
and that's what Mr.
Thanks, good clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Shropshire confirmed prior to the vote that if this was turned down, that we would default to dealing with any emergency. So if the HVAC does go, they're going to repair it. They're not going to come back to council and say, gee, can we repair our HVAC or something else?
So, Mayor Ken, what if we moved option E, which says take no action and make Civic Center repairs on an emergency basis? If I move that, it's basically it's the same vote, I hope, but it would
Mr. Mayor,
provide direction for emergency repair.
Yes, Mr. Norton, yes.
Problem with the problem, Mr. Mayor, with that vote is what if it fails? Then we got a problem where you voted to try to maintain status quo, and if you vote not to maintain status quo, then I really don't know where we're at. So my suggestion is
It'll be status quo.
Unless somebody wants to move a new motion to do something, I would suggest you just leave everything.
The guidance to administration, barring a revolt here, is that if there's anything emergency required, they're going to do it. Like they normally would before this vote came up, that's what we're going to do, and without having to vote on it and saying that if there's something that needs fixing, fix it. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Could we call for estimates on a new HVAC system and have them come back with a price for that right now? Or is that, no?
That would be another conversation altogether.
Okay, thank you.
Is what? Sorry, what, Councillor?
That is basically what my motion was, that failed on a 9-9 vote. We would have been able to discuss picking things off the list that we thought were appropriate, but that failed.
So what we can do then is, if you want to make a motion for the administration to bring back a report to fix the HVAC system, that is, the clerk has confirmed with me that's something different than what we have here, and you could put that out, and we could look at that as far as so, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I put out a motion to find out what the replacement of just the HVAC system would be to tie into the system that's there now, if we could.
Okay, and Councillor Solomon, were you going to second that, or?
Not unless it's coming back to budget. Not unless it's meant to come back to as a capital expenditure in budget.
Well, this would be just a report to look at it, and not to prove the spending.
Just if we're not willing to put the money to it, it doesn't make, we're just back to cycling. So no, get someone else to do that.
Mr. Kelly, if you're looking at a quote to give us some price, how many weeks, is there something you could, in a week, put together for the budget? Or is this something that you're going to need 2 or 3 months for?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd need a couple or 3 months. And we would actually start with the same process. Again, it's a tire systems design. So we would utilize architectural services to do that and then acquire contractual type quotes as well.
Okay, do I have a seconder then for Councillor Wright's motion? Councillor Pinsino. Any other questions regarding the asking administration to come up with a quote to replace the HVAC system?
Clearly the prayer group left too early.
Seeing none, we'll put that to vote.
Mayor, if I could comment, I don't know if we've done the best job communicating, but if you're going to put in a new HVAC system, you've got all the ceiling ripped apart. You might as well put in new lighting, right? And there's no sense putting in a new HVAC system if you're not going to repair the windows. All of those things, and I can't put in a new HVAC system and not move people out. So it's going to be very close to the number I just gave you, but prepared to look at it.
Okay.
All votes are in. Motion passes 10-8.
Okay.
All right, we'll get a quote on the HVAC system then. All right. As far as timing, you said, Mr. Kelly, 2 to 3 months? Sometime in the spring of this year?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Thank you.
Corporate services.
All right, item 18, corporate services.
Item 18A, Cannabis Host Communities Network.
With this one, I've been asked to sit on it, and I was planning on it, but I was looking for someone to work with me in any meetings that I couldn't attend, and we can work together on that. I don't know whether there's anybody that would like to join the party, say, as far as helping to sit on this committee. If I don't see anybody volunteering, I'll pull someone off to hopefully attend in my place. But if there's, Councillor C. McGregor, you're volunteering. Any other volunteers? Okay, if not, Councillor C. McGregor, you and I will work together on this file. So if we could add in Councillor C. McGregor to this, or Councillor C. McGregor when necessary rather than or designate. Okay, so Councillor Solomon, seconded by Councillor McGrail. Any questions on this? Councillor Pinsino.
Thank you, Worship. I'm happy to see this coming together. Part of what you will be doing, is it kind of regulating how the facilities are going to be placed? And because I know the original motion from Councillor Harrigan kind of addressed that. Is that what part of this will be?
Do you want to do that?
Thank you, Your Worship. We received an invitation to participate in a host communities network. Basically, those communities within Ontario that hosted either cannabis growing operations under the regulations or those that had different types of dispensaries were the two different groups. There was a group that had some of the initial investments in those businesses, and they've reached out to other communities such as ourselves that have similar types of investors, and this is so that we can come together and look at issues of shared interest. So there may be times when there's a recommendation or feedback going to the provincial government, but this is not actually to develop all those regs necessarily. It's really to look at it with a municipal lens and take a look at issues of mutual interest related to cannabis, growing operations, cannabis businesses.
Well, that's unfortunate. This whole industry was dropped on us and by the province, and honestly, they didn't put any real thought or preparation into it, into the process. we as a municipality, we should have rules and regulations that can respect the residents as well as fellow business owners. This process of growing the cannabis has a real nasty smell, and there should be regulations to how close you can be to a neighbor and on and on. And just hopefully this doesn't cause other businesses legitimate in this community to move. And they're popping up everywhere. Honestly, I think in time this is going to work itself out, but right now there's no real rhyme or reason, and that's unfortunate. I was hoping that's what this process was going to do.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 19, closed session report. We are going to go back into closed session after this meeting, so we'll have a report next public meeting. Item 20, approval of communication items. Councillor Oche, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any questions relating to those items? Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you very much. I'm going through it here. There was a letter to us from the MTO in regards to the 401 widening there. And there was a cutoff date of January 10th. Now, unfortunately, due to the council meetings falling on the 9th and now the 13th, I was just asking, did we submit or communicate any concerns or questions related to the projects?
I do not believe there was any communication to the MTO on the projects. If you're referring to the one where they're looking at widening the 401, that's correct.
Yeah, that's the one, the widening and reconstruction of approximately 55 kilometers, adding a lane, and the construction of a concrete median between Merlin Road to the CK Elgin County boundary.
Mr. Kelly can talk about some of our ongoing communications with MTO.
So thank you. We are having constant dialogue with the MTO with those specific items you mentioned. It's just more or less keeping us in the loop. But where we're having a lot of discussions, detailed discussions, is on the Bloomfield overpass and how all of those changes relate to that Bloomfield overpass.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the information package, there's a letter, actually a resolution from the town of Tecumseh with regard to 911 misdials. And in the capital projects list for this year, there is a request for funds for 911 service. And I was just wondering whether the request of $50,000 could, in fact, address 911 misdials.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the honest answer is I do not know, but I will contact Chief Con and get a report back as soon as possible if that's part of the plan.
Right.
As you know, the police run our 911 dispatch centre, so.
Okay, and seeing no other questions, all in favor of accepting the information package? Against? Carried. 21, non-agenda business. Knowing we do have an in-camera session to get to. Councillor Thompson.
The only one I wanted to mention was that the Polar Plunge in support of the Special Olympics is this weekend. I believe it's the Sunday. And I better double check because is it Saturday? It's Saturday because I'm taking part and I'm already not looking forward to it. So that's why I can't remember if it's Saturday and Sunday. But anyway, if you haven't donated, I would love a little bit of cash. If you want to come out and partake, it's not my first rodeo. It's not a lot of fun, but it's for a good cause.
Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you. Just a shout out to April and the Public Health Unit, as well as our PUC with the recent boil water advisory that took place in Tilbury and Wheatley. I know there was a lot of door knocking and information sharing, and through social media, Councillor Oche and I had a number of requests, and when we asked for more information, we were provided it very quickly, so I think that helped with alleviating concerns. And Councillor Oche's notice of motion tonight will also help us to improve that process going forward, but big kudos to the staff.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you, Your Worship. The United Way of Chatham-Kent will be having its campaign touchdown on Thursday morning this week. Breakfast will be served at 7:15, and the announcement will be made at 7:45, and it's at the Links of Kent.
Okay, I just want to add Gord Malott. He left. He's one of our regulars. He's here every meeting. He just wanted to pass on some real kudos to the RVG group, that they've provided amazing service to his family, so he just wanted to pass that on. Okay, so reading the bylaw, first and second. Councillor Solomon, seconded by Councillor Oche. Third and final reading. Oh, sorry, all in favor of the first and second? Opposed? Carried. Third and final reading. Councillor Finn, seconded by Councillor B. McGregor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Resolution of Council in closed session and adjournment.
Thank you, and through the Mayor, I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, February 10th, 2020, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act. I would also please note that there is a tentatively scheduled council meeting on January 27th, 2020 that will only be called if required, and proper notice will be provided.
All right, seconded by...